Hi guys, it's Sam from Made by Erland. Thank you for joining me today. Today we're going to be doing Sophisticated Craft Design's newest pattern. This is the Pandora Charisma. If you've done Sophisticated Craft Designs patterns before or you've watched my videos, you might think, sounds a bit familiar. Well, that's because the Charisma is the newest bag to join the Pandora line. Those of you who don't remember, Pandora Allure was released earlier. I want to say early in the year, but it's not. It's February this year already. So it was released in September 2024. So it follows on the same concept in that it has two compartments. And whereas the Pandora Allure was more your day-to-day bag, the Pandora Charisma for me is almost more like a work bag or a tech bag, something like that. In fact, when we were talking about sizing and all of that, one thing that Jassy really talked about a lot was wanting headphones to actually be able to fit into the main compartment. That's why you'll find that the main compartment, although still has pockets, because let's be honest, this is Jassy, there's going to be pockets, has been left pretty large and open so that you could fit those big chunky headphones. Now, I always talk about learning new things whenever I do a Sophisticated Craft Designs pattern. This one is no stranger to that either. Is that the right way to say it? I don't know. Anyway, this right here is a hidden zipper pocket. I've never done them before and I absolutely love how it looks. So right there, that is your hidden zipper. So from the front, you can't see it, but it's there. I absolutely love that. The back, I have to say, is one of my favorite rectangle bags I've ever seen, like in terms of a look. I love, love, love the back of this bag. It is so gorgeous. I don't know if it's the D-rings, if it's the zipper, if it's a mix of everything. I love it. This looks amazing to me. Now, what makes this bag special? Why do you need it? So first of all, like Pandora Allure, this one is double compartments. Double compartments, double the fun. Come on, let's be honest here. Now, like all Sophisticated Craft Designs patterns, it comes with all the pockets, but they're all functional pockets that have been thought of and serious consideration has been put into them. So that's a huge plus. Now, wearability, how can we wear this? So this comes with, the pattern instructions comes with instructions on using a detachable strap or an attached strap. So for this one, my first test to make, I used an attached strap. So I've just got a buckle and on the bottom, you can choose which side to have the swivel hook on. So that is functional for left-handers, right-handers, whether you'd prefer to wear it front or back, over your right shoulder or your left shoulder. So it is a gorgeous sling bag. Now, if you don't want to wear it as a sling, it also comes with D-ring connectors, so you can wear it as a crossbody bag. So that is your usability options. Jassy is crazy when it comes to giving us options. She gives us all the options. Now, let's take a closer look. When I said pockets, let's talk pockets. So I already told you about the front hidden pocket. Absolutely gorgeous. I love that. Back zipper pocket. So this is fantastic if you are traveling. I absolutely love my back zipper pockets. The Fold and Zip Backpack has one. I use it when we're traveling for passports because it's easy to just quickly slip your hand behind your back, grab them out, but then it's also secure and right up against you. Love, love, love back zipper pockets. Okay, now let's take a closer look inside. The big compartment, like I said before, it was designed so that you could fit big chunky headphones. For me personally, I don't have big chunky headphones. I've been able to fit like cardigans, changes of clothes, heaps of stuff in it without any problem. We have a mesh zipper pocket on the front interior panel. The mesh zipper pocket is perfect for things that you need to grab, electronics, cables, things like that, that you kind of want it to be easily accessible, easy to see, but still tucked away. So that's where that is. The other side, we have a slip pocket as well as a key leash. I am the first to put my hand up and say I do not have keys. I know a lot of us now probably don't have keys. My car keys, for example, is a remote, so I wouldn't use a key leash. But do you know what a key leash is great for? Attaching purses, wallets, things like that go missing in your bag. So that's what I've actually been using my key leashes for now. Okay, back zipper compartment. Enough of me talking, Sam. Back zipper compartment. So this is where we actually have our tablet or electronic holder. So this is it here. It is a padded sleeve. So this is for your iPads, your tablets, that kind of thing. On the other side, to complement the fact that you have your tablets, your iPads and all that, we have a 3D divider panel as well as a zipper pocket. Now, your 3D divider panel, see how this one's a little bit 3D there. I've used the bigger panel for my power bank and the smaller one for the cables. And then of course your zipper pocket for whatever else you might need for your tablet. And you can still actually fit stuff in there thanks to, again, you've got that side gusset. I love, love, love the side gusset. The side gusset allows you to open your bag so wide so you can fit a bunch of stuff in and close it up without the fear of everything falling out. It's genuinely one of my favorite features. If you like the side gusset and you liked making this bag, Jassy has a few bags that have that side gusset. Off the top of my head, obviously the Pandora Allure has it. Her Sophisticated laptop bag has it. Oh, Sophisticated Belle. Don't know why I forgot that. That's my daily handbag. That has it. Those are the top ones off the top of my head. There's probably more, and I'm going to get in trouble for forgetting it, but absolutely love this feature. Anyway, I've talked for so long. I'm sure you guys are excited to get sewing on this bag, as am I. So let's get sewing. Okay, let's talk about some of the fabrics and notions that we're going to need for the Pandora Charisma. Obviously, I can't fit everything in frame, so I'll move and talk as we go. So for the external of this one, I am doing a vinyl faux leather. So I am using a black as well as this kind of forest green as an accent. And I do have a panel piece. If you are cutting a panel piece, do be careful that you double check the placement of where your panel is supposed to be. Mine's probably a little bit too close to that side than I would like, but it's still going to work. So there it is. And your back, same thing with the front. Be careful if it is a panel where your panel is, because you're going to have a zipper on one side. You may notice that all of my pieces at the moment are rectangles, apart from, you know, the tabs and things like that. The reason for it is because Jassy provides us with not just the pattern pieces. Every single pattern piece is included as a paper cutout that you can do like the traditional method. She also includes cut lists as well as the SVG files. So the way I like to cut Jassy's patterns for me personally is with the cut list. I cut all of my rectangles out. Apart from my trickier shapes like these guys, I use the SVG files, and my Cricut Maker cuts it all for me so I don't have to deal with it. And then as I sew or as I go, I trim those corners using the pattern that actually comes in the pattern file. So I'm a bit of a weirdo. I use every single method available to me. Okay, so that's what we're doing with the external. It's all vinyl. For the internal, these are the options that I am going with. So we do need a mesh for a mesh pocket. So I use Sophisticated Mesh from Sophisticated Supplies. If you've watched any of my other videos before, you know that I love Sophisticated Mesh. It's got beautiful structure, but it's still exactly what it is. It's mesh. Okay. For my slip pocket, I am using a waterproof canvas that I got from one of our fabric shops in Australia, Inkling and the Kraken. It's absolutely beautiful. It's non-fray. But yeah, I'm using waterproof canvas for that. For my linings on the inside, so I am using two different colors of Sophisticated Twill from Sophisticated Supplies. If you've not watched any of my videos before, it's my preferred lining. The reason being, it's waterproof, it doesn't fray, it's Got beautiful structure, but it's also still nice and thin, so it's very domestic machine friendly, especially when we're looking at bags like this where there's a lot of pieces. So that's one of the reasons why I love Sewfisticated Twill. So the colors that I'm working with today is eggplant. I'm using eggplant for all of my pockets as well as for the other side of the slip pockets. And I am using this beautiful, I think this is peacock, I think. Yep, I think it's peacock. And yep, like I said before, these are some of the pieces that I cut with the SVG files. So it's one of the reasons why I love Jassie's patterns. It literally caters for everyone and everything that you have. Okay, now stabilizers. So stabilizers, we actually use quite a few different types in this. So my preferred stabilizer is Sewfisticated Foam from Sewfisticated Supplies again. It's a self-adhesive foam. So we need to have a heavy version. So if you're not using Sewfisticated Foam, which I guess a lot of people probably aren't, you want to use something thicker and heavier. Jassie does have a whole list of options that you can use in the instructions. Being from Australia, I don't have that many options available to me, so I don't know what half of those words mean, to be honest. That's why I stick with Sewfisticated Foam, because I know what it is. It sticks and it's beautiful. So I am using Sewfisticated Foam Premium for the gussets and Sewfisticated Foam Premium as well for the front and back panels. For the middle panel, I am using Sewfisticated Foam in Light. I cannot emphasize this enough. Do not over-stabilize your bag, okay? So using these stabilizers are more than enough, okay? Especially with the vinyl finish. Do not over-stabilize. The last thing that we need is a super spongy, foamy type stabilizer, and that is for our cushioning for the slip pocket for your tablets. So I've got this here. This is just one of those squishy foams that you can buy. For us, it's in those big department stores, sewing department stores in Australia. But yep, it's just a squishy foam. So it's not, I think it might be adhesive, but yep, it's just a squishy foam. Okay, moving on. So webbing, I am using 1.5 inch webbing. Of course, it's up to you if you want to use 1 inch, 1 1/4 inch, that is absolutely fine. The pattern is drawn with 1 1/4 or 1.5 inch in mind. The reason being the bag is made for electronics. It's expected to get quite heavy, so a wider strap would make it more comfortable to wear. So depending on your strap width, we then need matching swivel hooks and sliders in the same width. We also need a 3 1/4 inch swivel hook. That is for your key leash. Of course, we need all of our zipper tape. And with zipper tapes come zipper pulls. We need some 1 inch D-rings. So this is for the strap attachments, as well as rivets. So the stem length of your rivets depend on how thick your fabric is. So I just have all my rivets here so I can grab whichever one I need. So that's all of the fabrics and notions that fabrics and hardwares that we need. So let's keep moving along. Just remembered there's one more notion I forgot to talk about, and that is binding, your choice of binding. So for me personally, I like using fold over elastic. That's what this looks like. This is a 3/4 inch thick, a 3/4 inch wide fold over elastic. So like the name suggests, it's elastic and it folds perfectly like that, which for me makes binding a lot easier. You can also, of course, use pre-made binding, or you can make your own binding. The choice is up to you. But for me in this tutorial, and to be honest, whenever I bind a bag, I use fold over elastic. I have more videos going into fold over elastic and how to get perfect binding with it in my channel. So please go and check them out as well if you've never tried binding with fold over elastic. It's honestly a game changer. Okay, before we begin, let's quickly talk about some things that you may find useful for this pattern. So first of all, obviously scissors. I've got my normal scissors and my thread scissors. This is a rivet spacing tool guide that I got from Brymax. I absolutely love these. It's so great for measuring out rivets. Hemostat, if you have one. if you don't, or if you're not confident in one, I'm still not confident in one. I still love my pokey pokey stick or stiletto. Forgot my trusty lighter. You always need your lighter to singe your ends. Fabric safe pen for your choices of fabric. So I have one here that is a wipe cleanable for vinyl, as well as a heat erasable one for fabric. Clips, clips, clips galore. Hump jumper. I thought I lost it. I didn't. I was smart. I put it there. Hump jumper. There's a lot of different thicknesses with this pattern, so a hump jumper could be super important. If you do not own a hump jumper, I have been known to use whatever is near me that gets me to the level I need, including the rivet spacing guides. Okay, we also need hole punches for your rivets, a way to set your rivets, painter's tape, and double-sided tape. Now, for those of you who've watched my videos before, you may notice one thing that is missing on my table. Seam ripper. I believe in the seam ripper curse. If you don't have your seam ripper, that's when everything goes wrong. I don't know where my seam ripper is. So please have your fingers crossed for me while we film this. But if I were you, I would have my seam ripper at the ready. Okay, so let's get going. Okay, first step we are doing is our logo tag. If you are doing a logo tag, Jessie has given you suggestions on where to put it and measurements. So if you are doing one, you can do it now. If you're not, let's keep moving on. Okay, and now we are moving on to our zipper tab. So we're getting our piece ZT1 zipper tag, and we're going to cut that into 4 equal pieces. There we go. Now that we've cut it into 4 equal pieces, we're going to get our ZA zipper. Make sure you singe on both ends if you haven't already with a lighter. It's just good housekeeping. And slide your zipper pull on if you haven't done that already. Okay, once your zipper pull is on, what we're going to do is we are going to attach our zipper tabs, one on the top, one on the bottom, with the fabric right sides facing each other. And we're going to do that on both sides of the zipper tape. Go. And now that we've done that, we're going to take it over to the sewing machine, and we're going to sew both of those ends with a 3/8 seam allowance. Then we're going to turn those tabs right sides out, and we're going to top stitch the entire perimeter. So follow me over to the sewing machine. Okay, so we're starting with the zipper tab, and like I said before, we're doing a 3/8 seam allowance, and then we're going to turn it around, so 3/8 on both sides. And on the second side. Okay, after we've done that, we're going to turn the zipper tabs that we've just sewn right side out. So just pull it open and flatten. And then we're going to top stitch around the perimeter with a 1/8 seam allowance. And of course the other side as well. There we go. And let's head back over to the overhead view now. Okay, so now that we've finished our zipper, we're going to grab our front panel zipper pocket exterior. Now here's a little fun thing. So you can have your zipper pocket either on the left hand side like the pattern, or on the right. It is completely up to you, so you can actually just do this on either side. Okay, so I'm doing it exactly as per the pattern, so mine is going to be on the left. So the first thing we're going to do is mark a mark from whichever side you're going to have the pocket. So for me, the left hand side, and you're going to mark it on top and bottom. So the marking that you need to do is in the pattern instructions. So snip it slightly. So this just helps you identify, well, not just identify it, sorry, it just helps you later on. So do a little snip, probably about 1/8 of an inch in, so literally just a tiny little snip. And then what we're going to do is we're going to grab our zipper tape and we are going to align it right sides together with the edge, and then we're going to baste it on. So make sure your zipper is zipping upwards to close. So, and we're going to go over to the sewing machine. We're going to baste this on with a 1/8 seam allowance. Now, after we have done that basting stitch, we are going to grab our pocket lining piece A1, or one of them anyway, and we are also going to line that up right sides together to the external, sandwiching the zipper tape, and then we're going to sew that together with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, but I'll show you over at the sewing machine, so follow me over. Okie dokie, so let's baste that zipper on. So that is a basting stitch, so it's just with a 1/8 seam allowance. Okay, and like I've said before, after we basted that on, we're going to grab one of our lining fabrics, lining zipper pocket fabrics. We're going to match it right sides together, and we're going to sew that on with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Next, we're going to snip those corners just to help reduce the bulk. And then we're going to flatten that lining out, but we are just going to top stitch the lining. So we are not top stitching the zipper, we're not top stitching the external top, we're just top stitching that lining with a 1/8 seam allowance. Okay, next thing we're going to do, next thing you're going to grab your other zipper pocket lining and you're going to line it up. This is the right side of the fabric, this is the wrong side. So right sides to the wrong side of the zipper tape, but the side that you haven't sewn on yet. So over this side, we're going to flip that exterior fabric out of the way, just like that. So you're only sewing the zipper and the second piece of lining. Okay, there you go. So I'm going to be sewing it like this. So again, this is not being sewn down. It's the zipper tape and the new piece of lining. Okay, so, and we are just basting this down. There we go. Now that that's basted down, we are going to grab our side accent piece. Okay, we're grabbing our side accent piece. Sorry, I had to put you guys on pause because I couldn't remember which color I was using for my side accent, so I had to double check the measurements. So I'm grabbing my side accent piece and I'm going to line my side accent piece right side together with that zipper that I just did. And then I'm going to sew that together with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And then after that, I'm going to open it up and then I'm going to top stitch it with a 1/8 seam allowance. Okay, so let's grab that machine back over. Okay, so this is a 1/4 inch. I do like to sew it with the lining side up because of the bulk of this, to be honest. Like, this gets quite bulky. So I just find it easier to sew it this way up. Oops. If you guys saw that, which I'm sure you all did, I forgot about my zipper pull. So I'm just gonna quickly take that off. I went back a couple of stitches so that I wouldn't go off my stitch line. And there we go. Okay. Okie dokie. And now that we've sewn that all together, like we've been doing, snip those 2 seam allowance corners. If you've never done one of Jassie's patterns before and you're wondering, do I really need to snip these corners? Just do it. Because of the amounts of pockets that there are, the bags do get bulky quite quickly. So always best to just snip it. Okay, so I'm just flattening that seam allowance. And then, so I'm going to keep my lining facing the other lining, and I'm just top stitching, well, pretty much just this is laying flat, if that makes sense. And I'm going to top stitch that with a 1/8 seam allowance on that side accent piece. Okay, and then to close up that zipper pocket, what we're going to do first of all is we're going to trim that zipper pocket lining. So one is longer than the other. So I'm going to trim off so that they're both the same length. So they match up. Of course, being very careful not to trim your exterior fabrics. Okay, and after we've trimmed that off and they're the same size, we are going to sew this edge together. So just the pockets, don't let anything get in the way, just the pockets, and we're going to sew that together with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, okay? There we go. I'm actually moving it that way this time so you guys can have a better look. Okay, so this part is, if you've never done it before, could be a bit tricky. So those marks that we made on the side now, that we've also snipped a tiny bit, what we're going to do is we're going to fold there. That's why those snaps, those little snips are helpful, because it just helps your fabric fold a bit better in the way that it's supposed to. Here we go. And then what we're going to do is we're going to top stitch just right along that edge there that we've just folded, okay? And then just top stitch just along there. Let's bring that sewing machine back in. Okay, and we are top stitching, so 1/8. Now that we've done that, we are going to just where this will naturally fall. Let that fall where it naturally falls. Clip that in place, and the same on the bottom. Making sure that it covers your zipper tape. See how my zipper tape is completely covered? You cannot see it, so that means it's perfect. And then we're just going to baste that little bottom bit shut. Well, not the bottom and top. We're just going to baste those 2 little fold bits, I guess is what I'm trying to say. There we go. Okay, and now that we've covered our zipper pocket so it's nice and hidden, we're going to grab our bottom accent piece, and we're going to line that up right sides together. Now, if like mine, yours is slightly shorter, it is probably because you've cut it wrong. I know, I probably have. But just to be sure, double check the width of this panel and measure it up against the pattern piece or the lining piece or the back exterior piece. Any one of those will do. So I'll quickly double check that with a ruler, and I'll be 2 seconds. Sorry. Okay, I'm back and we're all good. So we're going to line that up to the bottom. Now, one thing I should mention is if for whatever reason this doesn't fit, these 2 pieces aren't the same width, so your bottom accent and the front panel that you've just done isn't the same width, and you are sure that you got all your measurements right and your zipper is covered, that's the main thing, that your zipper is covered and nice and hidden away, then trim from this side. Trim from the side accent is my suggestion. And Yeah, that's my suggestion. Trim from the side accent. And then we're going to move on to that bottom, and we're going to sew that bottom together with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now, I will say this. So there are some testers who found with the 1/4 inch seam allowance that this panel was still slightly longer than the lining panels, but that's absolutely fine. We're just going to do this first and deal with it later. Okay, so sewing this on with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and of course while we sew this on, that will close up the pocket side edges as well. So if you've been wondering why those side pockets haven't been closed, or why that zipper pocket hasn't been closed up along the sides, this is why, because it's going to happen right now. There we go. And then we are also trimming off again those 2 corners. And then we're going to open it up and we're going to top stitch along the bottom. Oh, do I change threads? Nah, black looks nice. So we're just going to top stitch along that bottom. There we go. Okie dokie. Now, one thing that I like to do now as well, I could have just done it when I did that. I didn't, but I'm just going to top stitch along this top edge just to close up that zipper pocket and to hold it all in place. You don't have to, because obviously when you sew everything together, that's going to get sewn anyway, but it's just something I like to do. And obviously I've not lined these up properly, so there's a little overhang on my zipper pocket. That's fine. I'll just cut it off. There we go. So that's our front panel done. So let's keep moving on. Okay, now we're going to be moving on to the D-ring tabs. So first of all, what we're going to do is we're going to draw a line right along the center, which I've already done off camera because obviously I can't bring a ruler into the frame. And what we're then going to do is we're going to grab some double-sided tape. This part is a little bit up to you, whether you want to stick on both edges and then bring it in, or just stick it straight down the middle. I tend to just stick it straight down the middle. Peel that off, and then we're going to bring both long edges in to meet that center line. There we go. And then what we're going to do is we're going to top stitch along the whole perimeter of that with a 1/8 seam allowance. Okay, so let me quickly get the other ones done and then we'll go top stitch it. Okie dokie, so follow me over to the sewing machine. Okay, so we're just top stitching around the perimeter for the D-ring tabs with a 1/8 seam allowance. Okay, just like that, and we're doing that with all 3 pieces, okay? Here we go. So that's your 3 D-ring tabs all done and ready to be put aside. If you're doing a detachable strap, you're going to need to get a piece of G2, which is a D-ring tab as well. And you're doing exactly the same thing that you did with the D-ring tabs earlier. So you're marking the center, double-sided tape, bring the long edges to the center, And then what we're going to do for this part is we're going to take it over to the sewing machine. We're going to top stitch around the whole perimeter. Then we're going to slide the D-ring in and then baste it shut. But follow me over to the sewing machine and let's get sewing. Okay, so this is your detachable style D-ring tab. So like I said before, we're just top stitching that around the whole perimeter with a 1/8 seam allowance. Go. And then we're going to slide our D-ring through. I have a small problem. I've run out of black D-ring, so I'm using an oval ring, but it is the same situation. So pretend this is a D-ring. And then we are meeting those short edges and sewing it shut. There we go. Okay, and let's keep moving on. So with this one, I am doing a detachable strap with a D-ring. Like I've said before, I don't have a D-ring, so I am using a rectangular ring or an oval ring. I can actually just change across and do rectangular ring so that it's an attached strap, but for this tutorial purposes, let's pretend this is a D-ring. So we're going to grab our 2 strap connectors. We are going to mark the center points on the top and bottom for both of the pieces. We're going to grab our D-ring tab that we've just sewn. We're going to match it up center to center with that mark that we just made. And we're going to have an overhang, okay? And we're going to leave an overhang. The overhang amount is listed in the pattern instructions. So we're matching it up with the overhang, and this is center to center, just like that. And we're sandwiching this in between the 2 pieces. So if you'd like to, you can baste this on first. Actually, that's probably a safer thing to do. Let's baste this on first. So we're going to baste that on first. And then while we're at the sewing machine, we're then going to grab the second piece, match that up right sides together, and then we're going to sew around the perimeter, leaving the large opening open with a 3/8 seam allowance, and then we're going to burr it and top stitch the whole thing together. But follow me over to the sewing machine and we're going to baste stitch that on first. Okay, so first of all, I'm just going to baste that tab in place. Go. Now that that's basted in place, I'm going to grab the second piece of the strap connector piece, and I'm going to match it, like I said before, right sides together. And then I'm going to sew these pieces together, leaving the big straight open. I'm going to sew it together with a 3/8 seam allowance. Now, as you come over to this part here, you may find that it gets bulky quick, so you might need to grab your hump jumper. I do. Just to level that up. And again on this side. There we go. And now that that's sewn together, we are just going to trim the corners. Do not cut off your overhang, whatever you do. We're trimming those corners. And then we are going to turn it right side out. And then after we turn it right side out, we're going to top stitch the whole perimeter. Now, before I top stitch it, I am just going to quickly make sure I get those corners pointed out nice and beautifully. Okay, 2 seconds there. There we go. Okay, and then I'm going to top stitch that whole section with a 1/8 seam allowance. Okay, so I'm just top stitching around that whole perimeter with a 1/8 seam allowance. There we go. And now that that's done, we can just put that aside and let's keep moving on. Okay, moving on to our back panel exterior, and we're going to be doing the zipper pocket now. So first of all, we're going to grab our back panel exterior piece as well as our pocket lining piece. What I like to do first of all is measure the center points on both of these pieces. So I've measured the center points top and bottom and the sides, and on this I've just measured the center point right there. And then what you're going to do is you're going to draw a zipper box on the wrong side of your pocket lining piece. So you can either measure it up as per the pattern instructions, or there is a zipper box that you can copy across from the pattern pieces if you prefer. Okay, so I've already done that. There's my box drawn right there. And next what we're going to do is we're going to match the exterior back panel and the pocket lining fabric right sides together. There is a measurement on the pattern instructions as to where to measure it, how far down from the top. Normally, if I wasn't filming a tutorial, I would actually just have my quilting ruler right there so I can measure it up nice and flat and straight. But like I've said before, because I'm filming a tutorial and I can't give away Jassie's measurements, I cannot bring a camera ruler onto camera. So I've marked my 1-inch marks there, and I'm just matching my fabric to that. Next, what I'm doing is I'm just clipping this in place. And there we go. So again, that's right sides together, matched down from the top. The measurement is in the pattern instructions. And what we're going to do now is you're going to double check. This is important. You're going to double check that your zipper box is a certain height away from the base. So let me quickly check that. Perfect. And it's perfectly right. The amount that it's supposed to be from the bottom of the box down to the base is exactly correct for me. So I can keep moving on. So the next step that we're going to do is we're going to sew along both edges of that zipper box, just along those two lines. I know some people like to sew around the whole box corner. The reason that we only sew the two lines is it tends to give you a cleaner finish, okay? If you do want to sew around the whole box, do it, but we are just doing the two lines, okay? After we've done that, we're going to cut the zipper box open and turn it right side out. But follow me over to the sewing machine and let's get that started. Okay, so like I said before, we're just sewing along the two horizontal lines. So you might see my head for a second. I'm just double checking that my needle is going down right on that corner there, so it's perfect. And then the second line. I'm just double checking that I made it to the end. There we go. So now that that's done, what we're going to do is we are going to cut the fabric open. So you can draw on where you're going to cut. So you're going to draw on a center line as well as a triangle. I'm not going to do that because mainly I've done this so many times already. Now, if you've never cut one of these before, there are a couple of options. You could put your seam ripper in through the middle to break a little hole and then continue seam ripping. Or I like to use scissors, so I like to fold my fabric just like that till I can find the center. I cut a little cut and then I continue cutting. And then at the ends, the trickiest part with your zipper corners, if you don't know, is to try and cut it as close to the thread without cutting the thread. Please do not cut the thread. Okay, So now that we've done that, Jassy has given us the option of using a bit of double-sided tape or a tacking stitch to sew the pockets down. For me, I tried it on my tester make and I don't know, maybe I just don't know how to do it properly, so I'm not a huge fan of it. So what I do instead is I just really give my seams a very, very good press. Make sure you get those sides too. And then turn it the right way around. So okay. Now, one thing that I find helpful with these kind of zipper pockets when one side is a faux leather vinyl, especially because obviously it's a bit thicker, is I like to use a little bit of clips along the short edge. Just clip that in place. If your fabric, like mine here, has decided it doesn't want to play ball and it's sticking back in, that's fine. Just pull it back out and give it a little press. Now, if you'd like to as well, you can use some painter's tape and stick this side down. I find I don't need to. The longer side tends to have enough pull on its own, but I will put some clips on the long side there at the base as well, just to help hold everything in place. So when you turn it around, you should have a beautiful flat zipper box, just like that. Oops, can't actually see it, just like that. So now I'm going to quickly grab the zipper tape for it. Go. If you haven't already, put your zipper pull on, just like that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put double-sided tape on both edges, both of the long edges. And then we are going to line, we're going to take off the backing, of course. Then we're going to line the zipper tape so that it closes upwards with our back panel. We're just going to try and center it as well as we can and stick it in place. Okay, so I'll do it this way so you guys can see. So it's closing that way and opening that way. There we go. So once you're happy with the placement, what we're going to do now is we're going to bring the sewing machine back down and we're going to top stitch around the whole perimeter with a 1/8 seam allowance. Now for myself, the zipper boxes, I tend to not like to reverse stitch and I like to pull the thread out through the back and tie it off. For me, I just think it gives a cleaner finish. So if you've never done that before, all it is we're going to the back of the fabric and we are pulling on the loose threads until the front thread comes through. We're doing that on the other one too. So once your threads are all pulled through, just tie it off. And what that will do is it will give you a nice, beautiful front without having the, reverse stitching showing. Go. So your front should be nice and beautiful, no reverse stitches. And there we go. So let's keep moving on. Okay, so our zipper's installed, everything's beautiful. The next thing we're going to do is get our second piece of our zipper pocket lining. that we had saved up. We're going to match it on the back side of this, so the lining side up, and the linings are going to be right sides together. We're going to clip it in place of just the lining, so do not clip your external, of course. You do not want your external to be sewed up. And we're going to sew these 2 pockets pieces together with a 3/4 inch seam allowance around the whole perimeter. So for those of you who use seam guides and aren't good at imperial maths like me, 3/4 is number 6. So I like to start on the side where the zipper's on and with the exterior up, so that way you can fold it out of the way so it's not in the seam guide. Or not in the sewing area, I guess. Go. So now that that's done, what we're going to do is we're going to trim that excess seam allowance off too, because obviously it's very, very wide right now. So we're going to trim it down to, Jassy has on here 5/16. I'm not going to lie, I am never that pedantic. I don't measure it out exactly. So 5/16 to me is roughly about 1/4. So that's what I do. I do roughly about 1/4. Just making sure before you trim that your zipper tape isn't going to be in your trim area, which it isn't. It shouldn't. And when you trim, making sure that you are not cutting your external fabric, okay? That's super important. Do not cut your external fabric. Otherwise, all your hard work has gone for naught. Now, you can use franking shears if you prefer. Right now, as I'm cutting here, you might see that there is a sticky bit. That's because that is actually zipper tape that I've just cut, like the ends of the zipper tape. That is fine, because at the end, I can just singe it. Okay. There we go. And because like I said before, I did cut those ends, I am going to need to singe it quickly. So just grab your lighter. Okay, if you guys can hear that, I'm sorry. That's my little Miss 4-year-old. She's having a little tanty. Okay, so just singeing that off if you did cut the zipper tape. And I'm going to need to take a mum break and come back. But that is your back zipper pocket done. So we've just finished doing that zipper pocket with the back panel. So now what we're going to do, unless you are using a fusible stabilizer on the lining piece, what we're going to do is we are going to adhere your sew-in or your self-adhesive foam, however you're going to put it. So if you're doing a sew-in, obviously you're going to baste it on. If you are doing a self-adhesive like I am, we're going to stick it on. If you are not, if you're using a fusible stabilizer on the main lining, then what you're going to do is you're going to need to adhere 2 strap pieces of stabilizers along where the D-ring is, okay? So, but I am not, I'm using Sewfisticated foam like I've said before. So it's literally a stick. It's straight on type situation. If you've never done it and you've got a zipper pocket, one thing that I do recommend is opening that zipper pocket up now and just making sure that's being adhered beautifully. So I'm just running my hand in there and smoothing out any wrinkles. There you go. You can see in there, just smoothing all those wrinkles out so it's nice and beautifully adhered. Okay. Now that we'll keep moving on. So we're going to grab 2 of the D-ring tabs that we've sewn up before. We're going to mark a center mark. So fold it in half, find your center, which is those 2 there. And then on either side of that mark, we're going to mark on 3/8 of either side, sorry, we're going to mark another dot. So that's your center. So I've marked 3/8 that way, 3/8 that way, and I've done it on both sides and of course on both pieces. Okay, so we're then going to slide our D-ring in. And the D-ring should fit right on the center right there. Okay, and we're also going to apply some double-sided tape onto the back side of this. Okay, I'm just going to put that down. Grab some double-sided tape. So not too much. I just like to put just a tiny little bit, not within that 3/8 mark that you've made. Just roughly there. Yeah, that looks good. Quickly do that side as well. Okay. And then what we're going to do is we're going to mark 2 markings from the bottom up and from the sides in. These are also markings that are marked on your pattern piece. So you can just copy it straight across from your pattern piece. And we're going to stick these D-ring tabs down just above those markings. Now, a good little check that you can do as well is just to double check how far up your D-ring is. There is a measurement there that you can double check how far up you are supposed to be from the bottom as well. But the main thing is that they line up, and you can kind of tell, see, like that's pretty much centered and perfect. And so we're doing it on the other side as well. Okay, I'm just going to quickly grab my ruler and double check that I am happy with that marking there. So give me 2 seconds. Yep, that is absolutely perfect. So I am exactly the marking that I need to be from the bottom to the marking that's closest there. So that is exactly what I want. And we are perfect. Okay, now what we're going to do is we are going to go over to the sewing machine and we're going to top stitch these tabs down, but we're going to top stitch from the edge, obviously, to the first marking, across, back down, and close it off. And then we're going to start again and do it on the other side too, stopping there so that obviously you have a 3/8 gap between each one to the D-ring. And we're doing it on both sides. So follow me over to the sewing machine and we'll get sewing on that. After that, we will install rivets, but let's do this first. Okay, so we are now going to sew these 2 down, like I said before. So I'm going to start from this bottom one. We are sewing it with a 1/8 seam allowance. And we're just sewing to that marking that we made before so that we've got plenty of space for the D-ring. I'm sorry if my head is dumping in. I just want to make sure my needle is going down at the mark. There she is. Okay, now, as you can see, or maybe you can't see, but I am going to need my hump jumper. So if you do need your hump jumper, do remember to pull it out. It helps prevent skipped stitches. Sorry if my head is in the way. Again, I'm just double checking my placement. And then up. And for the first one, before you've actually got the D-ring actually stitched down in place, I like to move the D-ring back a bit so that I don't have to use a hump jumper just for this little bit. Yes, I know it's technically cheating, but that's what I like to do. And then I'm just closing it off. So this bottom section is now closed off. So I'm moving my D-ring back to that marking, the middle marking, and then I'm going to do the top down to that point as well. There we go. So that's that down. And then we're going to do the second side too. There we go. And now that that's all done, let me just quickly clean up my markings with those pens and we'll be straight back. Okay, so now that we've sewn those two D-ring tabs on, we're going to move on to installing the rivets. You may have noticed that I have changed D-rings. That was a black oval ring when I sewed it. I finally came to my senses and realized that was not the right choice. So I've swapped it over to a gold D-ring. That's why it is now changed. So what we're going to do is we're going to mark the positions for our rivets. On the back piece, we are doing 3/8 away from the stitch line that you just did and centered on either side of those lines, 3/8 and centered, and on the other side, 3/8 and centered. And then also on the connector tab, 3/8 down and centered, okay? So that's where we're installing all of our D-rings. So install it however you do. I use a table press. I'm using the hole puncher as well for it because, yeah, this is just a lot to cut. I'm just going to sneak this in quickly as well if anyone needs something like this. These are rivet spacing rulers that I bought from Brymax. Actually, it might show better on these. That one, because it's still got the backing. These are amazing. If you can't seem to get rivets that match up to each other, that was me until I bought these guys. So it comes in a set of 4. I've lost my 1-inch one right now at this exact moment, of course. So you've got the 1-inch and 1.5-inch wide straps, and then it has, you know, 1/4-inch measurement all the way down to 3-inch measurements for the distance from top to bottom. So you can really measure it up and make it super easy. So yeah, I love that. That's probably, I want to say it's my most used ruler at the moment, but that's not exactly true at all. But I do use it a lot. If you've watched my other videos, you might have even seen me use it as a hump jumper. And that's probably why I've lost the 1-inch one. It's probably hidden under somewhere where my hump jumpers like to go missing. So anyway. And now we're just moving on to installing these rivets. Okay, double check that your that these are the right length rivets that you need. I need a longer one for my tab because this is quite thick. Just a quick little bit of housekeeping that I like to do. I always like to put a little drop of ideally super glue or just glue inside your rivet, even though I use a handheld press. I know some people say, no, if you use a handheld press, you don't need it. But, oh, sorry, not in there, in the frame. But I just find, just gives me a better peace of mind knowing that this rivet is secure and it is not coming out, you know? Okie dokie. So that's now all done with the rivets. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to trim off these excess edges with the D-ring tab. There we go. And then last one is we're going to grab our strap connector and we're going to match that center to center to our back panel, and then we are going to baste that in place. So let's head back over to the sewing machine and let's get that basted on. Okay, so just basting that on, so it is just a 1/8 seam allowance. There we go. And that is your back panel now also all done. So if you wanted to go take a break, now's the time to do it. But otherwise, let's keep moving on. Okay, we're now moving on to the side gusset assembly. Okay, so first of all, we should have 6 pieces all up that we've cut. Now we're going to take 2 pieces and we're going to put the other 4 aside for now. So we're just working on 2 pieces right now. Okay, I'm just double checking which way is right side up for me. That's the wrong side, that's the wrong side. Okay, so first of all, what we're going to do is we're going to fold it short edges together, right sides together. We're doing that with both pieces, so right sides together, matching those short edges. And then we're going to take it over to the sewing machine and we're going to sew just along that edge there with a 3/8 seam allowance. Once we've done that, we're going to turn the fabric right side out and then we're going to top stitch around the whole perimeter. Okay, follow me over to the sewing machine. So we've got our side gusset, so we're going to be sewing the short edges together only with a 3/8 seam allowance. And we're doing that on both pieces. Okay, so after we've done that, what we're going to do now is we are going to turn this right side out. I like to press this bottom seam open first. For me, it's easier. And then turn it right side out. And then now that it's turned right side out, I'm pressing the seams again. It's just something I like to do. And then we are going to top stitch around the whole perimeter with a 1/8 seam allowance, okay? Go. Now, you may notice that you have a little bit sticking out there from the seam from before. That's fine. I like to just quickly trim it off. You don't have to, but I like to. And then what we're going to do next is we're going to fold it in half so the long edges meet. And then we're going to top stitch that folded edge with a 1/8 seam allowance. Okay. And we're going to do the same with the second piece as well. So top stitch around the whole perimeter, oh, turn it right side out, top stitch around the whole perimeter, fold it in half and fold that seam, okay? Okay, now that that's done, we're going to put both of these aside and these are going to be your back panel side gussets. So if you need to label it somehow, please do. But these 2 pieces will be your back panel side gussets. And now let's keep working on the other 4 pieces. Perfect. So what we're going to do is we're going to match it right sides together, short edges matching. And we're going to do that with all 4 pieces. Okay, and then we're going to take it over to the sewing machine. We're going to sew this together with a 3/8 seam allowance along the bottom edge and along one of those long edges. So 3/8, just like that. And then we're going to turn it right side out and then we're going to top stitch. So follow me over to the sewing machine and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so we've got the 4 pieces. So I'm going to be working on one piece at a time just to show you guys what I'm doing. So we're sewing from the short edge, like I said before, from the short edge and one of the long edges with a 3/8 seam allowance. And then along the long edge, oops. Okay, now that that's done, what we're going to do is we're going to quickly trim off the corners and that corner there. Then we're going to turn it right side out, grabbing something to help poke those corners out nicely. There we go. Then you're just going to quickly smooth those edges down, flatten all the seams. And then what we're going to do is we're going to top stitch along the bottom, the raw edge, and the top, okay? So the top, the raw edge, and the bottom. And we're top stitching that with a 1/8 seam allowance. Okay. So this is what you should end up with. So your folded edge is not stitched, is not top stitched, and your raw edge and your top and bottom are both top stitched. If, like me, you have a little bit sticking out down here from the seam allowance, that's fine, you can trim that off. Okay, and we're going to do that with the remaining 3 pieces as well. Okay, and there we have it. That's the 4 side panels for the front gusset. So you can either put all 4 of them together now and have a break, or if you are continuing on, put 2 of them aside, and the other 2 we are going to use well, not right now, but we're going to use it very shortly. Okay, so let's keep moving on. Okay, so now we're moving on to the key leash. So we're grabbing our key leash fabric, turning it over to the back side, and we're going to measure 3 lines. There's a measurement in the pattern instructions. Obviously, I can't bring a ruler on, so I've already measured it out. But you're measuring from both of the long edges, so from that edge in, from that end in, and 1 short end, so from that end in there. Now on the side, on the short end side, what you're going to do is you're going to trim those corners. This helps you with reducing bulk. Go. And then what I'm going to do now is grab some double-sided tape. I'm going to apply a little bit of double-sided tape just along that short edge, as well as along both of these long edges. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold all of these edges that I drew on in to match the marked line that I drew. Okay, so first of all, that short end, I'm matching it down to that drawn line. And then I'm doing that on both of these long edges to meet the line that I drew. And then we're going to match the long edges together again. Just fix this up. I'm just not 100% happy with that short edge there. There we go. And then just match these long edges together and fold that together beautifully and clip it all in place. And then you're going to get your swivel clasp. You're going to slide it in on the short end. You're going to fold the fabric back about 3/4 of an inch. Clip that in place. And then what we're going to do is we're going to top stitch around the perimeter with a 1/8 seam allowance. And then after that, if you would like to, you could then also install an optional rivet just above the swivel clasp, or just below the swivel clasp, just to help hold it together, making sure that you don't punch any of the stitches when you do that. Okay, so follow me over to the sewing machine. Okay, so we're top stitching this down. I like to top stitch with the open flap down. I don't know why, it's just my preference. And I like to do it on the side that opens first. We're doing this with a 1/8 seam allowance. It is a top stitch. If you have a pokey stick, so a stiletto, it is a great idea to use it. I do not know where I've placed mine right this exact moment, but I have a pen with a cap on. Okay, as you come up to the bit where you've got the fold, just watch where your fold is. Now, the thing to be wary about when you come up to this bit here is the thickness of what you are sewing under, whether you need a hump jumper. I am going to need a hump jumper because my foot is resting on my swivel clip, as you can see right there. So you can either grab a hump jumper if you've got that on hand, or something that's thick. So right here, I've got a rivet spacing tool, which is what I'm going to use right now. There we go. Just to get over that hump. And then once we're over that hump, we're smooth sailing. There we go. So that's all sewn together. We've just sewn our key leash together. So it's up to you if you would like to now install a rivet as well. I do like to. So make sure you don't cut your lines and center. I just think a rivet's a nice little, yeah, just a nice little bit of bling. So install your rivet however you do. I do use a cam snap table thing. Okay, and just install it however you would normally install it. Sorry, that probably shook my whole recording thing. There we go, so that's installed. And get rid of my cam snap table press thing. And that's your key leash, so let's chuck that aside. Okay, now we're going to be working on our slip pocket. So grab your slip pocket lining pieces. So I do have one as a feature fabric, one as a plain fabric. And what we're going to do is going to match them right sides together along the top if your fabric is directional. And we're going to sew this edge together, the top edge, together with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Once we've sewn that together, we're going to trim the seam allowance corners, turn the fabric right side out, flatten the top seam, and then top stitch. But I'll show you how we do that over at the sewing machine. Okay, so this is the slip pocket. Like I said, it is with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. We're sewing along the top edge only. Okay. Once that's sewn together, we're just going to cut off your corners along the seams there. This just helps you reduce bulk for the final assemblies. And then we are going to turn the fabric right side out. Just pressing that seam first. For me, it just helps you get a cleaner finish before you turn it right side out, and then press that full seam again. And then we're going to top stitch that edge that we just sewed with a 1/8 seam allowance. Okay, and we'll go back over to the top view to put it onto the lining panel. So now that we've sewn our slip pocket together, we're going to grab one of the main lining panels, and what we're going to do is we're going to match the slip pocket to the lining panel so the bottom and the sides match up. Obviously your slip pocket hasn't been shaped yet, it is a rectangle. That is completely correct, and just going to clip that in place so that we could baste it on. And then we're also going to grab your key leash that you made earlier. I'm going to grab your key leash that you made earlier. You're going to match it up 1 inch from the side along the top there. I'm going to clip that in place as well. And then what we're going to do is we are going to baste the key leash on, and we're going to base your slip pocket on. I always find it easier to base your slip pocket on with your lining side facing up. For me, I think it's because I don't have a flatbed sewing machine, so it stops your fabric from moving as much, so it stops your slip pocket from moving as much. It gives me a cleaner finish. So after we baste that on and baste that on, we're then going to trim those corners so the slip pocket matches your lining exactly. So follow me over to the sewing machine and let's get that all basted on. Okay, so we're base stitching that slip pocket and the key leash on. So I do like to sew key leash side up when I'm basting the key leash on, and then swap it over to having this the wrong way up when I actually sew the slip pocket. So I'm going to sew it wrong way up with the lining piece facing up. I just find doing it this way without a flatbed especially, my fabric doesn't move as much, and so I just get a better, a better sew, I guess. There we go. And after that has been base stitched together, there we go, see that's all base stitched together. What we're going to do is just quickly trim off the excess slip pocket so that it matches. So you will see here that obviously I've got the corners, which you will have as well, but I also have a little bit excess here. So that's to do with when I cut the fabric. I've obviously cut the slip pocket slightly wider, so I'm going to trim that too. So that's all it is. As long as it's all cut in that basting stitch seam allowance, it's not a big problem. There we go. Okay, so that's all done. So let's put that aside and we'll keep moving on. Okay, moving on, we're going to be working with our mesh pocket. And we're going to start with the zipper for the mesh pocket. So I've got my ZE1 zipper and my ZT2 zipper tab. So first of all, we're going to install the zipper pull if you haven't already. And same as what we did with our front panel zipper, we're going to get our zipper tab fabric and we're going to cut it into 4 equal pieces. There we go. We're going to put them on the ends of our zipper, right sides together. And we're doing this again on both ends of the zipper tape. And again, like we did with the front panel zipper, we are going to sew those sides together with a 3/8 seam allowance on both ends, turn it right side out, and then top stitch the perimeter. So follow me over to the sewing machine. Okay, so this is with a 3/8 seam allowance. We're just sewing those zipper tabs on. And then once those are sewn on, we're going to open them up, flatten it up, and top stitch around the whole perimeter of the zipper tab. There we go. And now that that's all done, let's keep moving on. Okay, so moving on to our mesh fabric. So we're grabbing our piece E1, our mesh fabric, and there is a measurement on the pattern instructions where you're measuring from the top and you're going to measure that out and cut that into 2 pieces, okay? What we're going to do next is we're going to grab our binding, whatever choice of binding that is. I'm using fold over elastic. As you can see, it's still on the ream, the big roll. What I will say, if you are using fold over elastic like me, because this is mesh and this is fold over elastic, so obviously both of them have stretch. So just be careful when you do this that you don't stretch your fold over elastic. Because you don't want to stretch it, you don't want it to, because if you stretch it, you will warp your mesh out of alignment. Now, if you are using fold over elastic like me, always singe the ends. It's just good housekeeping. Okay. And then what we're going to do is we're going to grab some double-sided tape. And we're going to put some double-sided tape along both of the long edges. Now, just be careful when you do this, okay? Some sewing machines really don't like double-sided tape, mine included. It will gummy up my needle and then I get nesting threads. So what you're going to have to be really careful of is where you're sewing when you're doing this. For some people, you might be better off not doing the double-sided tape. I will show you another way of doing it with my top piece, where you don't have to use the double-sided tape. It doesn't look as neat as it would if you used double-sided tape, but for some, that may be your only option, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to match up our mesh, make sure not to pull it out of whack, so it's completely flat and not taut. And match it up to the center of your fold over elastic or your binding, and then you're just closing it down. Now, Jassy has also suggested that now is the time that we include our sew-in tag, if you do have one. She suggests a minimum of 1 inch away from the edge. So I'm just going to do it here and just stick it down as well. Okay, now, the other option, if you are not using double-sided tape, is to fold your elastic together and clip it in place. And in order to make this as neat as possible, I highly suggest you getting a thread that matches, obviously bobbin and top, the fold over elastic that you are using. And what you're going to do is you're going to sew this on with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, okay? Now, the reason why I say this will be messier is because later on we're going to put both of these onto the zipper tape and sew the zipper tape on. So this one that doesn't have any stitches on it already is obviously a clean slate for you to sew. This one will already have a line of stitches on it. So you will have to either ignore those stitches or sew a perfectly good line of stitches on top of the line of stitches that you just sewed to minimize the amount of stitching that you have. That's why I specifically say use the color thread that matches this perfectly, okay? But follow me over to the sewing table. We'll quickly get that sewn on. For those of you who are just using the double-sided tape, just skip the sewing and meet me back here. So this is the bonus content. So you shouldn't be sewing the binding on if you don't have to. If your machine is okay with double-sided tape, that is the best option. Mine isn't, so I'm showing you guys another way. So I'm sewing this on the binding onto the mesh with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now just be careful to sew it as straight as possible, because you are going to need to try and match that stitch line again when you sew this mesh onto the zipper tape. Okay, so this is only if you are not using double-sided tape. Okay, so now that that's on, we're going to head back over to the overhead view and I'll show you the rest of the way if you were doing double-sided tape or this method. So follow me back over. So continuing on our mesh pocket, if you did the detour with me and sewed the binding on, that's what it looks like. If you didn't and you just did the double-sided tape, this is what it looks like. And what we're going to get next is we're going to get the zipper that we did before. We are going to put double-sided tape on both long edges of the zipper tape. Just making sure. Go. Undo the double-sided tape and we're going to stick this on. I like to line up the bottom of your binding with the bottom of your zipper tape. So that's how I feel looks the nicest and goes the nicest. Being careful not to stretch your mesh so that it is overstretched, because you want it to just be nice and smooth with no elasticity added in at this point in time. Okay, and we're doing the same with the top. Go. So when you look at the back, you should see that the zipper tape is the same as your binding. It's not here, but it should be. And then what we're going to do now is we're going to head back over to the sewing machine. So first of all, we're going to go in with two rows of stitching. So the first row would be with a 1/8 seam allowance, so it'll be closer to your zipper tape. The second one would be 1/8 away from that, so it will be closer to your binding edge. So that's what I mean by being careful if you are sewing it on like I did on the top. So the bottom, of course, I have no stitch lines, so I can sew wherever I want. Well, not wherever I want, but I can sew it and it doesn't matter too much. But on this one, because I've sewed it on and didn't use double-sided tape, I'll have to be careful to try and re-sew on that same line so that it doesn't look messy. Okay, so follow me over to the sewing machine and let's get that sewn on. Okay, so we're sewing the mesh onto the zipper tape. So I'm going to start with the bottom one first, and I'm doing a 1/8 seam allowance closest to the zipper tape. So this is the one that I used double-sided tape on. So one thing to keep in watch while you're doing this side, if you use double-sided tape especially, is if your needle is gumming up. And the best way to tell it is with your stitches. So with my sewing machine, if my needle has started gumming up, I get crazy stitches on the back, which I haven't. My stitches are still beautiful, so I'm all good. Okay, I'm going to do the top now next. So again, we're just doing a 1/8 seam allowance. Okay, now that we've done the 1/8, we're going to go back in and we're going to do a second row of stitching. So just 1/8 from the row of stitches that you just did. Here we go, and I'll look just like that. So you've got your 2 rows. So that's what I was talking about with this one. See how, because I didn't use a double-sided tape on it and I just sewed the binding on, so I've already got a row of stitching, but obviously that doesn't sew down my my zipper tape. So I still need to do a second row of stitching. So I'm going to have another line of stitching, but I'm going to try and match it up with the line that I've already done. This is maybe me being a bit pedantic, that I want to match it up as much as I can, but that's just me. Oops. And I haven't matched it up, spoiler alert. Okay, so here you go. So you can see over here it's matched up really nicely. Over here I've gone wonky. But that's what I'm talking about with why if you can use double-sided tape, use the double-sided tape. If you can't, this is an option to do, okay? So whenever you've got double-sided tape, double check that your stitches are still nice, especially on the back, that it hasn't gone all funky. And yeah, let's keep moving on. So the next thing we're going to do is we are going to grab another piece of the lining fabric, have it facing right side up, and we are going to match the top of the mesh with the top. So I can do it over here. So we're going to match the top of the lining, top of the mesh with the top of the lining. Your mesh will overhang. That is absolutely normal. Okay. And we're going to clip that in place, and then we are going to baste it in place. Okay. If you have never sewn with mesh before, I do suggest sewing from the bottom up. So again, wrong way up. So the reason being is then your mesh doesn't get a chance to pull as much, so everything stays a little bit more stable and flat. So this is just a basting stitch with a 1/8. Okay, once that's sewn on, so that's what it looks like. It's all sewn together. Obviously, you've got the overhang. So what we're going to do now is we're going to cut off all of the overhang that you've got, be it the zipper tab and the binding, as well as the mesh. So I'm going to cut it from the wrong side because obviously you can see on that side. Now, if like me, you used fold over elastic with your binding, make sure you singe your fold over elastic because you've cut it. Every time you cut fold over elastic, make sure you singe it. Okay, there we go. So that's our mesh pocket done. I just need to quickly singe. If I can find my lighter right now. That fold over elastic. There we go. Right. So that is our mesh panel all done. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to grab two of our gussets, the front panel gussets. So they're the ones that you made 4 of, where it's completely folded in half like that. And we're going to match it up and sew it on. So there are measurements on the pattern instructions again as to where you're supposed to match it up, measuring from the bottom up. So I've already pre-drawn that on as always. So we're just going to clip it down. That is flat against the edge. That is, the bottom is reaching the drawn on point, or the marking that we just made. And other side. And then now all we're going to do is just baste both of those in place. And the other side. And there you go. That is our front panel lining with the mesh all done. So we'll put that aside and we'll keep moving on. Okay, now we're working on the sleeve pocket. So grab your sleeve pocket lining pieces, which is your piece E4. Again, I have a feature fabric as well as a Sophisticated Twill. And we're going to match them right sides together. And we're going to sew them together along both the top and bottom edge. And we're going to do that with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, so we're going to go over to the sewing machine. Like I said, we're going to sew the top and bottom together with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Then we're going to turn it right side out. We're going to insert the padded stabilizer. And then we are going to top stitch around the perimeter with an 1/8 seam allowance. But I'll show you that when we're over at the sewing machine. So we're now doing the sleeve pocket. So with this one, we are sewing the top and bottom, like I said before, with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, and once we've sewn the top and bottom together like we did with the slip pockets, we're just going to trim those edges off and then turn it right side out. Okay, I'm just giving it a finger press to give myself some nice little, move this back a little bit more. Okay, now that is all finger pressed and the right way, we're going to grab our foam stabilizer, or padded stabilizer I should say, so the extra puffy one. We're going to slide that inside. Just try and make sure that it's as centered as I can get it. Okay, so we're just trying to make sure that that is as centered as possible, which it is. And then we are going to top stitch around the perimeter. I'm just giving it another press to make sure I'm happy with how it's sitting. And we're going to give it a top stitch around the perimeter with a 1/8 seam allowance, just to hold that foam in place. There we go, and we'll keep moving on. Okay, now that we've finished sewing together our sleeve pocket, we're going to grab another piece of the main lining. We're going to match this sleeve up to the long sides, matching up the sides, and we are coming up a certain measurement from the bottom. There is a measurement in the pattern. I've had to draw it on. If I wasn't filming, I would have brought in my quilting ruler and just lined it up against that. And then I'm going to clip this in place. Actually, I should make this really clear in case anyone doesn't click on this. Okay, so there's 2 measurements mentioned as part of this section. Okay, so the first measurement is the 1 1/4 inch. So the 1 1/4 inch is what we are matching our sleeve pockets to. Okay, so this is matched to 1 1/4 inch from the base. Okay, next what we're going to do is we're going to grab our back panel side gussets. So you can sew this on first now, base this on first now if you'd like. Otherwise, you can also grab your base, your back panel side gussets, and you can sew them on now. So give me 2 seconds. Okay, and if you need a reminder, the back gussets are the ones that you sewed a line down the middle. Okay, so we're now going to measure 1/3 of an inch from the bottom. So it will be on top of your sleeve pocket. The top stitched edge, so this edge, would be facing downwards, so you'll have it opening like this. So again, that's your top stitched edge. You're going to have it like that. and you're matching the bottom of this to that mark that you just made. And then you are lining it up and clipping it in place as well to sew, well, to base that all in place. Okay, and we're doing the same on this side. Again, making sure your top stitched edge is facing down like that. Okay, and if you'd like to now, a good little thing to do is grab some painter's tape. And what we're going to do with the painter's tape is just stick a bit down here to keep that wing or gusset open so that it doesn't get in the way as you sew your bag, because we do not want this to get sewn down, okay? So I'm just going to open that up and I'm going to use a bit of painter's tape to stick that open. Oops, too much painter's tape. Ooh. Okay, so now that I've got that all organized, we're going to head over to the sewing machine and I'm going to baste the sleeve pocket and those back gussets down to the lining. So follow me over. So we've just got the sleeve pocket like I did with the slip pocket piece. I am going to sew this on upside down. So this is the back of my lining, remembering just to be careful as I go along, because obviously I do have a few more layers with this one, because I do have that gusset which I have stuck down with painter's tape. Found my thread scissors. Okay, and then other side. There we go. And that is your lining sleeve with the slip pocket all done. I am going to leave the painter's tape on for now, and we'll keep moving on. Okay, now we're going to be working on the internal zipper pocket. So we're going to grab one of our main lining pieces as well as our zipper pocket lining. On the wrong side of the zipper pocket lining, you are going to draw a zipper box. Again, the measurements are in the pattern instructions, or you can also just transfer it across from the pattern piece. So I've already drawn it on there off camera. Okay, and then you're going to bring this piece over. There is a measurement as to how far down from the top of the lining piece you should match this up. So again, if I weren't doing a tutorial, I would just have my quilting ruler there to hold its space. And I'm just going to quickly clip this in place. So this is right sides together, if I didn't say that before. So right sides together, and it's just down from that top edge. The measurements are in the pattern piece. The pattern instructions. And just like we did with the other zipper box, we're going to head over to the sewing machine. We're going to sew along the top and bottom line, and then we're going to cut it open, turn it right side out, and then sew the zipper on. So follow me over to the sewing machine. Okay, so moving straight in, we're just doing this exactly like we did the exterior back panel zipper pocket. So we're just sewing along those two straight lines. Okay. And then just like we did before, we're going to cut the center open in between that zipper box and turn the fabric right side out. And then because this one isn't a vinyl exterior like the other, both sides are sophisticated twill, sorry. So I'm actually going to flatten all of these seam allowances. So it just helps make your pocket sit better when you turn it right way round. For me anyway, I've found. There we go. And then we're just bringing the fabric through like we did before. Like I've said before, sometimes you might find, like for me right now, I'm going to do it, a little bit of painter's tape can really help, like this bit here, how it keeps popping up. It doesn't matter that it pops up. It's just for me, I like it when everything sits flat. Okay, and once you're happy with your pocket, we're going to grab our zipper tape. Zipper pull if you didn't already have it installed. Quickly install it. I don't think I've said it before, but it's always good housekeeping to make sure you singe your zipper tapes. I've already done that while I was cutting the zipper tapes, so that's why I'm not singeing it right now. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing that we did before on the external, and that is to grab some double-sided tape along those edges. Okay, and in Jassie's diagrams, she does have the zipper closing this direction and opening that direction. So I'm going to be following her directions and doing it the same way. So we are closing that way, opening that way. Okay, and then putting this straight on. Making sure the zipper tape is centered and you're happy with the placement. There we go. And then we're going to top stitch around the perimeter like we did before with a 1/8 seam allowance. And like I did on the back, I'm just pulling my threads through and tying it off on the back. Okay, I'm just going to show you guys here quickly because I did not have a good time there. I have a skip stitch right there, as well as I pulled one of the wrong stitches out when I was trying to put it all together. So if you ever needed to fix a skip stitch or a lost stitch, what we do is we try to match up our stitches as well as possible with our last stitch one back. And just sew back across it, just like that. So now you can cut off your skipped stitch. And tie off that new line of stitching that you just did, and no one's the wiser. Okay, and while I'm fiddling over here, we're just going to quickly grab our other piece of zipper pocket lining. We're going to match that right sides together with the zipper pocket lining that you've got now. And then we are going to clip it together so that we can sew it together like before with a 3/4 seam allowance, and then we're going to trim it down. So right sides together. Actually, here's something that could be useful for some people. If your zipper is sticking out a fair bit like mine is, you can pre-trim it now Just make sure you still leave a little bit there. Like I've probably got about a 1/4 inch there. And like with zipper tape, whenever you cut it, make sure you singe it. Do that on this side too. If you had double-sided tape that you used, get rid of it. That's on the fabric. If it's going to be in your stitching area, because it can gummy up your sewing needles, which is all sorts of not fun. Okay, and then right sides together. Then we are going to sew this together with a 3/8 seam, 3/4 seam allowance again, sorry. So again, that is a number 6 if you are not sure. I find for my sewing foot, I struggle to get to 6 sometimes. So 1/4 inch on this side where the zipper is. So I'm not gonna lie, I do go somewhere between 5/8 and 6. So for me, it's just that little bit easier to get to. Again, making sure you're getting rid of the top fabric as you sew, so you're not sewing on top of it. You're folding it out of the way. I'm gonna put your foot down. And then we are going to trim that seam allowance down to roughly about a 1/4 inch, making sure again not to trim your external fabric. So I'm just using normal scissors. You can use pinking shears like I've said before on the front. It's completely up to you. There we go. And we'll keep moving on. Okay, so this is for the 3D divider pocket. So we're getting our divider pocket piece, which is piece E6. We are folding the fabric together, right sides together, so that short edges meet each other, just like that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to sew it together, but we're going to leave a gap. So I'll probably leave the gap in between these two clips. And what we're going to do is we're going to sew together along that edge first. So 1/4 inch seam allowance around to there, leave that open, and then all the way around there. After we've sewn that together, we're going to trim the corners, the seam allowance corners, turn the fabric right side out, flatten it, and then we're going to top stitch just along the top edge to close up that gap. But follow me over to the sewing machine and I'll show you what I mean. Okay, and this is the 3D divider pocket. Like I said, we're sewing this together with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and we are leaving a gap on the top there. Sorry. And we're leaving a gap, like I said before. And starting again over here. Go, and once that's done, we're just going to trim off your corners. Just gonna trim my thread a little bit too. And then turn this right side out, so burr through that hole there. Now, because you've got those corners, you might need to get something to help you with poking out those corners to get them nice and crisp. There we go. And then what we're going to do is we're going to fold that opening. Just like we normally would hide a birthing hole. Just like that. And then we're going to top stitch along this top edge with the birthing gap with a 1/8 seam allowance to sew that shut. So if you have extra threads like I do, just make sure they're tucked in there. There we go. And we'll just put this aside and we'll keep working on it from the top view. So follow me over. So now that we've done both the zipper pocket as well as the divider pocket, we're going to bring them back together. First of all, I'm going to mark a marking on here, making sure to either use tailor's chalk, or I'm using a heat erasable pen, so something that will actually come off. Please, if you do not have it, if you do not have any pens that are like wipe cleanable or will come off your fabric, I have been known to use painter's tape and stuck it down. So that's another option. Painter's tape, it's my best friend. Okay, so we've marked that down on the divider pocket. On the 3D divider pocket. And then what we're going to do is you're going to mark or cross across from the pattern instructions 2 markings. Again, if I was able to bring my ruler in, I would use my ruler to mark it on. I do not, so I'm doing it this way. And we're just matching it on the one edge first. So we're matching on one side and one side only first. What I might actually do is still bring in my ruler and pause you guys to make sure that this is completely flat. Now, the way we're going to hold this all in place is, again, painter's tape. So let me quickly double check my measurements and that I'm happy with the alignment and that's straight, and then I'll bring you guys back on. Whew. I'm glad I paused you guys for a second and went and checked, because I don't know if it was super obvious for you guys, but I was not straight at all. So I'm just gonna go grab some painter's tape now that I'm happy with the alignment on that side. Because what we're going to do next is we're going to head over to the sewing machine. I'm going to sew right along there with a 1/8 seam allowance. After I've done that, I'm going to come over and I'm going to do this side. Obviously, this side at the moment is poking out, so we're going to have to bring that in like we brought this one in, and we're going to do a 1/8 on there as well, but I'll explain it more over at the sewing machine. So follow me over. Okie dokie, so we're now doing the 3D pocket. Now, the big thing to make sure of is your zipper pocket. Get that well and truly out of the way. So I like to just flip it over the top and clip that in place, because you do not want to accidentally sew on your zipper pocket to your 3D pocket. Okay, and then we are top stitching along that edge that we've just posted down with a 1/8 seam allowance. I do not, even though this is a showing thread and it is therefore a top stitch, I don't use a top stitch thread length to do this. I do it at a smaller thread length. Stitch length, sorry, just because I feel like it makes it a little bit stronger. So it's just a personal preference for me. There you go, so that's sewn down. So next what we're going to do is we are going to bring this side up to meet the point it's the same as that side, like that's included in the pattern. So I'm going to quickly bring my quilting ruler in so it's easier for me. I've got markings there, so it should be roughly there. But I'm going to bring my quilting ruler in to check it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the excess fabric over this side and I'm going to stick it down, okay? So give me 2 seconds as I grab my quilting ruler. Okie dokie, so I've just used my quilting ruler, lined it up there, made sure that is even and perfect. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew that down with a 1/8 seam allowance, just like I did on that side. And then I'm going to come back through and I'm going to sew 2 rows of stitching. So I'm going to go up and then back down along that line that I drew before. And then after that, I'm going to fold it down and then sew the bottom. But let's do that one and that one first, okay? So sewing machine. Okie dokie, so now that both sides are sewn on, I can take the painter's tape off. And then that line that I drew on before for the dividing section, I'm going to sew up and down straight along that line. Well, not straight along. I like to give myself a 1/8 gap in between it. But what are we doing next? Making sure, of course, that your zipper pocket is still nice and truly tucked away. There we go. Okay, so we've sewn both sides down. We've done the divider stitch. If you'd like to now, you can quickly go and get rid of that line that you drew, however you need to. So for me, it is with an iron, so I'll quickly go and do that and pop back over. Okay, so that's all done. Now, for the 3D pocket and therefore the bottom, what we're going to do is we are folding this side with the excess bulge to meet that side. Try and get it to fit equally top and bottom. And then we're going to top stitch that bottom. After we're happy with that fold, we're going to top stitch that bottom. Now, what I find helps me with holding this in place is, again, painter's tape. So just a bit of painter's tape right there. And then we're going to sew that bottom down. And that gives you a 3D pocket on one side and still another section here for like pens or cords or whatever it is you want to use it for. Okay, so we are starting on the bottom over this side. There we go. I've just realized in Jassie's pattern instructions, she actually does the bottom before she does the divider line. That's absolutely fine. Whatever you prefer. For me, I found this way I get an easier finish on that 3D pocket. See how that is a 3D pocket now, so it comes out more. Okay, so unclip that top. And that is your zipper pocket with 3D divider pocket all done. So we've actually finished all of our lighting panels, exterior panels. So I'm going to grab them all across and let's go back to the top view. Okay, so now we've finished all of the panels. Okay, so let's go through them quickly. So our external panels, we've got our front and back. For our front compartment pocket, we will have a mesh pocket and a slip pocket. Should put these actually together. Mesh and a slip pocket. And then for the back compartment, we have our sleeve pocket as well as our zipper with the divider 3D pocket. Okay, so that's all of our panels done. So let's move on to putting them together. So first of all, if you're doing this exactly as per the instructions, you can of course move the pockets around, lining panels around to suit you. But Jassie has designed this bag with usability in mind. So personally, I am making it exactly how she made it. I really like it. So that's what I'm doing. So I'm going to first of all work with the slip pocket as well as the divider zipper pocket. So this is going to be the middle panel inside your bag. Okay, so first of all, what I'm going to do is I am going to have them face down, right sides face down, and I'm going to grab my light stabilizer. So I am using Sewfisticated foam in the light, mainly because I'm an idiot. I should have just used the non-Sewfisticated version. I have plenty of that. I love using it. But I forgot that I had plenty of it. So I am using a fusible version, which is absolutely fine. I'm just going to fuse it down to the slip pocket side. Sorry if you guys can hear that. My partner is making lunch. There we go. Okay, now that I've put the stabilizer on, otherwise you could have just sandwiched it. If you weren't fusing it, you could have just sandwiched it, but I'm not. We are going to put these pieces wrong sides together and clip it in place. And then what we're going to do is we're going to baste around the whole perimeter to get these two locked in. Oh, maybe not locked in place. That's probably not the right word, is it? Just sewn up together. There we go. So let's head over to the sewing machine and let's get that all basted together. Okie dokie, so let's get this all basted. I normally like to do the side with the slip pocket and the key leash on the top. There is no reason for it. It's just my personal preference. What have I done? There we go. So that's all basted together. So let's keep moving on. Okay, now moving on to the front panel. So we are grabbing our front panel, and of course the last piece of front panel pocket is your mesh one. So we're going to match them like we did the other side, wrong sides together. If you haven't adhered your stabilizer yet, like me, you would adhere it now. One thing that I'm going to do before I adhere my stabilizer is I'm going to just quickly grab my center points. I'm only grabbing my center points top and bottom at this stage, not my sides. The reason being is I need to double check the height of my front exterior is matching up to my lining. I know my width is because I checked it before because of the bottom piece, but at this stage my front panel is a bit longer, or my front panel is a bit longer than my lining piece, as you can see there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly trim that off, and I'm going to trim that off camera just to make it easier to match. Okay, so the reason why this is a little bit long is because of the different material choices that you use. It could make a difference in terms of, and obviously your sewing allowance as well. It can make a bit of a difference here. So that's the reason why that can be different. But let me quickly trim that and I will be back. Okie doke, I'm back. Okay, so while I was off camera and I trimmed that bottom, I also went and marked off all of my center points. So that is all done now. And I'm going to adhere my stabilizer. So again, you could be adhering your stabilizer to your front panel exterior. You could be adhering it to your lining. It is up to you. I like to do it to my exterior. I am using Sewfisticated foam. It's super easy to do it to that. The only thing I need to do is just make sure that that lining pocket is nice and smooth. There we go. Get rid of all the bubbles. There we go. I'm happy with that. Close that back up. Okay, and then we are matching these wrong sides together. Of course, as you can see, I haven't trimmed these edges yet. If you wanted to trim it first, you can. I never do. I like to trim it after, and so that it is matched exactly to my lining. You may have also, did I say that I already marked all my centers? I hope I did. With this pattern, I definitely recommend you always marking your centers. It just makes for a much easier final assembly, okay? So if you are using sew-in foam, obviously just leave this foam on the inside. Just get your stabilizer in however you're supposed to get your stabilizer in, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Okay, And then what we're going to do now is we're going to baste that all in place. Now, make sure these are nice and tucked in so you're not going to sew over them where you're not supposed to. And let's head over to the sewing machine and get that basted on. Okay, so we've got the front panel. I like to sew this with the mesh side up. So that allows me to then follow the corners because obviously I haven't trimmed the corners for the exterior fabric yet. Right there, you would have just seen me lift my bag up to quickly move the zipper further down. It just helps level up the sewing, I guess, level for me. I don't know if that makes sense at all. There we go. Okay, so now that that's all done, we are just going to quickly trim off the corners on that external panel. So if you had already cut it earlier on, that's fine, but otherwise just trim it off now. There we go. So that is now your front panel all sorted. So let's keep moving on. And of course, your back panel. So your back panel, you should already have your stabilizer on, and or if not, on your lining, however you're doing it. Again, we are doing this back to back, so wrong sides together, clipping it in place, and then we're going to take it over to the sewing machine and baste it all together. So for the back compartment, you have your sleeve pocket, just to make sure you've got all the right pieces. Hopefully it's right, because by now that should be the last piece that you have. Beautiful. Okay, so let's head over to the sewing machine and let's get that all basted in place. Okay, now we're up to the back panel. Again, you will notice that I am weirdly doing the lining side up. You would think that I would do the back up, but for me, because the lining's puffier, I like to have the lining up, even though there's obviously D-rings and all that on the other side. Yeah, just a personal preference. Found my pokey stick. There we go. That's all basted together. Whew. And let's keep moving on. Okie doke. So let's grab the last D-ring tab. We are going to fold it in half and cut it into 2 equal pieces. We're going to slide our D-rings in, and then we are going to baste them in place. Okay, so follow me over to the sewing machine and let's get that done. Okie dokie, so let's grab our 2 D-rings, baste them shut. Okay, and let's head back over to the overhead view. Okie doke. So now that we've basted the 2 D-rings, we are going to bring in our 2 side gusset panels. Okay, so I'm using black for the side panels and green for the top. So first of all, what I am going to do is mark the center of my short edge here along the top edge. So if your gusset fabric is directional, you're doing it along the top edge. And then what we're going to do is we are going to match the center of the D-ring to the center of the top of your side panels. And you're going to leave a 5/8 inch overhang, and then you're going to baste that in place. Okay, and then we're going to head over to the sewing machine, and first of all we're going to baste that on. After we've basted that on, we're then going to grab our top panel zipper gusset. We're going to match it with the sides that you've just sewn the D-ring on. You're going to sew that together with a 3/8 seam allowance, and then you're going to do it on the other side too, the other side gusset. Same 3/8 seam allowance, open it up, top stitch, but I'll show you that over at the sewing machine. Okie dokie, so we're just basting these D-ring tabs on, making sure that you are leaving a 5/8 overhang on them as well. There we go. Okay, next thing we're going to do, like I said, is we're going to match the side gusset to the top gusset zipper panel, right sides together, and we're matching it to the side that the D-ring is sewn on. Okay, here we go. And we're going to sew that together with a 3/8 seam allowance. Now, just be wary, of course, because you have a D-ring underneath and a D-ring tab, depending on your tab fabric, you are probably going to find that you will need a hump jumper. I'm currently looking around in case you can hear my voice traveling around, because I have no idea where my hump jumper has gone to again. So, oh, there she is. There we go. So 3/8. I have somehow, don't know how, gone wonky. So I'm just going to come back in through here. There we go. Okie dokie. And then I'm going to do this bit quickly first. I'm just going to trim off those corners. And then I'm grabbing the other side of the top panel. I'm matching that to the other side panel with the D-ring. Again, the side with the D-ring. And we're again going to do this at a 3/8 seam allowance. Oh, sorry, my hand's in the way. Okay. And again, just trimming off, that seam allowance corner. And then we're going to open it up. We're doing this on both sides, and we are top stitching along the side panel. So this is my top, this is the side. So we're top stitching along the side panel, or the side zipper gusset. Again, being wary that as you come up to your D-ring tab, it can get very thick. So make sure you have your hump jumper ready. And same thing on the other side. Again, we are pulling everything over to the side panel side and top stitching along the side panel. There we go. Okay, so we're going to head back over to the overhead view and keep going on. Okay, so we've just finished sewing our zipper gusset together. So first of all, what we're going to do now is grab our stabilizer. So depending on the type of stabilizer that you are using, so if you're using sew and foam, baste it now. If you are using fusible stabilizer, Jessie recommends you to apply it to the lining since it's hardware on the exterior. I'm not gonna lie, I don't understand, because basically most of the time I use fusible foam. not fusible foam, sorry, Sewfisticated foam. So, smart thing is to just apply it right now. Now, one thing before you apply this stabilizer though, is please double check on the instructions. There is a measurement of how long this piece should now be. Please double check that measurement and make sure it is right. Mine is. It could be wrong based purely on your seam allowance, or if you've cut it wrong, okay? So double check that it's right. If it isn't, trim from either side. So search for your center on the top panel and then trim on either side so that your side panels and your top panel will still be centered and equal and not have one wonky side, okay? So with that being said, I am going to start installing my stabilizer. Again, I like to, because it's such a long piece, I like to find the center and start from the center. There we go. Okay, once that is on, the next thing we're going to do is mark out some spots for some rivets. So I've already pre-marked them on there. It is a 3/8 down from that seam, okay? So that's where we're marking, and that's where we're going to install those rivets. So let me quickly grab the rivet press. Double checking my rivets are long enough. Go. And that was just me adding a little dot of super glue. I've said that before. I just find it helps me, gives me peace of mind with my rivets, to be honest. I know people have said if you have a hand press, you don't need to, but I don't know. Rivet failures are the worst thing in my opinion. Okie doke. So that's all done. Moving on. Now that we've got our rivets installed, we've also got our everything all sorted there. Now, Jassy has a little tip here to use a bit of painter's tape to help protect the rivet on the wrong side. I know some people use, what is that word I'm like? Washers on the other side of rivet. That is particularly important because you don't want the rivets or the washers to then damage your fabric on the lining side fabric. Okay, so let me quickly grab a painter's tape. So literally just a tiny bit of painter's tape, don't need much. It's literally just to cover it. She good. There we go. Okay, next that we're moving on to is we're grabbing our zipper and we're going to line it up and we're going to baste it together. Now, if this is a directional print, you want your fabric to be facing that direction. So your zipper is being sewn on to the bottom edge, okay, if you are using directional fabric. Okay, so we're going to get this on and we are going to baste stitch this on. And then I think I'll bring us back over to the overview to talk about the gusset bit. Yes, because some people get confused by that. Okay, let's do that. Okay, follow me over. Sorry, before we head over, I forgot two things. First of all, yes, you will have overhang on your zipper tape. Your zipper tape is longer than your gusset. That is absolutely normal. It was made to be that way. Second of all, you may have noticed I haven't installed the zipper pulls yet. That is my choice. I don't like installing zipper pulls until I absolutely have to make the sewing easier. If you do not want to accidentally forget to install zipper pulls, which I'm not gonna lie, happens to me all the time, then install them now, but I am doing it later and I will remind you before I put mine on. Hopefully, let's hope I remember to put it on. Okay, cool. Okay, so we are just basting the zipper on to that side gusset. So it is just a basting stitch, so just a 1/8 seam allowance. Okay, that's basted on, so let's head back over to the overview. Fortunately, I have to bend my zipper gusset a little bit because I cannot get this camera any higher. This is as high as I can get it. So now that we've basted our zipper on, the next thing we're going to do is working with our last 2 gusset pieces. So these 2 guys. So what we're going to do is we're going to mark a marking from the bottom up, and that's on both sides of the zipper gusset. So not from the base of the zipper, that's very important. It's from the base of the gusset, okay? Up. So I've already marked it right there, as you can see. And we're going to match one of these pieces to that right along the zipper there. And we're doing that on the other side as well. So we are marking another spot from the base up and setting that in place. And yes, I still haven't installed my zipper pulls yet. I still have time, so don't worry. I haven't forgotten yet. Okay, and now what we're going to do is we're going to head back over to the sewing machine and we're going to baste both of those on. Now, I'm going to move on to the next step without coming back to this side, okay, because it's too much moving around. I'm getting dizzy. So, after I baste this on, I'm going to grab my lining piece and I'm going to match it up right sides together. So, right sides together with my exterior zipper gusset piece. And then we're going to sew along the zipper edge with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And then once we've done that, we're going to turn it right side out and we're going to top stitch with a 1/8 seam allowance. Okay, so follow me over to the sewing machine. Okay, so hitting the lights. So first of all, we're basting on that gusset piece. So just a basting stitch, so just 1/8. Okay, and then, I have no space behind me. I've got lighting and everything everywhere. Okay, and then the next piece, also basting that on with a 1/8. Okie doke. After that's done, like I said, I'm now going to grab the lining fabric. I'm going to match the lining fabric right sides together. Let me move this out of the way. May as well, right? Get some work room. I'm going to line it right sides together with the zipper gusset exterior. If your lining piece is too long, it probably means you've cut it wrong, because if you did double check your exterior size, like you were supposed to, I shouldn't say that, but if you did double check your exterior gusset size at the start, before we started this whole process, then that measurement should be the same as the lining measurement. So then this should be the same length. There we go. And then we're going to sew this together with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So bring that back in. Zipper sandwiched in between the lining and the exterior. And 1/4 inch seam allowance. There we go. Okay, and the next thing we're going to do, okay, so we're going to turn the fabric right side out and we're going to top stitch it. Now, before you top stitch it, this is where I'm actually going to install my zippers. So we are doing 2 zipper pulls. So one on either side. And the other side. Go. Okay. And then we are going to open it up. So turn it right sides together. So Jassy has a little tip here to just clip your external and your lining together. So it just helps hold it all together to make sure it lines up as you're sewing, and so it doesn't get too caught up underneath there. I'm just giving it a nice little press. There we go. And then we're going to top stitch with a 1/8 seam allowance. Now, little side gusset, that doesn't get included in the top stitch, okay? So just leave that over on that side with the zipper. So that's where it naturally wants to go anyway. So you're not moving it anywhere, you're just not shoving it underneath the top stitch, okay? Getting my threads all tangled up. There we go. Okay. So now that that's all top stitched together, so we're going to grab our base lining. We're going to match our base lining right sides together with our lining and zipper. Put that in place, and then we're going to base that in place with a 1/8 seam allowance. And then we are going to grab the exterior base fabric, and we're going to line that together with the exterior side, right sides together, of our zipper gusset. And we're going to sew that together with a 3/8 seam allowance. There we go. And I should have mentioned the stabilizer. So you may have had to infuse your stabilizer already to the base. I haven't done it because, like I said before, I am using Sewfisticated foam, so I can just chuck it on at the end, which is what I tend to do. So that's what I am doing. But yeah. And then next we're going to do is we're going to match the other side of that zipper gusset so that we're creating a loop, lining to lining, right sides together. And then we're going to base that in place. And again, we are going to grab the external base, and we're going to match that to the external side. Obviously, actually, I'm going to move this to show you guys because this bit gets funky. Funky? I don't think that's the right word. Anyway, okay, so we're going to attach the base to the other side of the gusset, which is obviously all the way over here. Okay, so it's big. So there's a couple of things you can do. You can fold it, you can bend it, you do it whatever way you like. I like to roll it a bit. Some people actually even just straight up shove it and make it work just like that. For me, I've always found rolling it is easiest for me, so that's what I am doing. There we go. And then like we did on the other side, we're sewing this together with a 3/8 seam allowance. Now, before I unroll everything, I'm just going to quickly trim off the seam allowances there, just on the bottom, not on the top, because on the top you've obviously got your zipper. So I'm just trimming off those corner ones right there. And then I'm going to let my little bundle out. Okie doke. Now I'm just going to slide my stabilizer straight in. So, like I said before, this is Sewfisticated foam, so it literally can just go straight in. So I can use it as a fusible, take the sticker off, or I can literally slide it straight in, which in this case, I am just going to slide it straight in because it is perfectly in there and will stay put. There we go, right there. Yep, so now what I'm going to do is top stitch around the base. So I'm just going to top stitch along, I don't know how there we go. Just along there, around, blah, blah, just like that. So let me grab the sewing machine back. I will try my best to not get in the way of you guys, but it does get tricky in these kind of areas, I think. Not gonna lie, I seem to be doing this in a very weird fashion. I've come in the wrong way. But that's just life sometimes. So that's our zipper gusset all done. So just turn it back right side out to show you guys. So obviously I had to roll it a bit to get it to fit. So I just need to let it sit and get those creases back out. But otherwise she is going to be absolutely beautiful. Okay, so we're now moving on to the zipper gusset for the back compartment. So it's done exactly the same way. Well, not exactly the same, it's slightly different to this one. So I'm just going to do it in this view. I'm going to be lazy. Why not? Let's join me over here, okay? Okay. My biggest, most important thing for the zipper gusset, for the back compartment, is making sure you cut your zipper tape exactly correct, because that is literally your main measurement. Obviously there is a base, but the main thing is your zipper gussets, your zipper. So if it is wrong, it's probably because you cut it wrong. I say that as someone who's done that before with the Pandora Allure. So if you haven't installed the zipper pulls yet, do that now. This one does have to be installed right at the start because we are straight up starting from the base. The next thing we're going to need to do is make sure your stabilizer is already installed on your base exterior. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to install the stabilizer. No, I am. Okay, so first thing I like to do is quickly find the center along those long edges for the base. Go. And then we are going to install your stabilizer if you haven't already. Oopsies. This is one of my favorite things about Sewfisticated foam, is how easy you can reposition it and move it about until it's exactly where you want it. There we go. And then we're going to do this exactly the same way that we did the other piece, except much easier. So, right side of your base against the wrong side of your zipper, and we are going to base that in place with a 1/8 seam allowance. Okay, so base that together with a 1/8 seam allowance. There we go. Okay, and then after that we are matching our exterior base right sides together with the zipper, and then we're going to sew all that together with a 3/8 seam allowance. And then we're doing it to the other side as well. So first the lining, going to baste that. Now, when you're doing this, make sure your zipper tape isn't tangled up, okay? So make sure your zipper tape, lie it nice and flat until you get to the other side. Bring it over. That sounds like such a silly thing to have to even say, but believe me, I've checked and somehow still done it wrong on multiple occasions. Okay, and we are basting this on with a 1/8 seam allowance. And then because this fabric is, well, not the fabric is thinner, but the whole situation is thinner, so it's much easier to do, and we are matching the zipper to the other side of the exterior, right sides together. And again with a 3/8 seam allowance. There we go. Okay, and then now we're just going to flip it right side out. Insert your sew-in stabilizer if you're using sew-in. And then we are going to top stitch it shut. Okie dokie. So that's now both our zipper gussets done. So let's keep moving on. Okay, so all our gussets are ready. Now the first thing that we're going to be working on is our back zipper gusset with our back panel. So that is this piece, the one that's just a zipper pretty much. And our back panel. Now, making sure that these pieces are still stuck down as they should be. If there isn't and you need more painter's tape, do that. I do find sometimes that I do need more painter's tape. There we go. Here we go. And then what we're going to do is we are first of all going to, if you haven't already, mark your centers. So I've spoken about this before. So I've marked my centers already, top and bottom and the sides of this panel. I haven't done it on the zipper gusset yet, so I'm going to quickly do that. Because this is mainly zipper tape, so I'm not going to cut it like I normally do. I'm just going to grab a nice and bright pen and mark all my centers. So that's my base center. I find that by matching these two together. Oh, actually, I did cut a base center here. Never mind. Get rid of those marks there. Thank you. And then I find my top center by folding that base in half, and that brings me to my top. I then find my centers by putting these two together, the top and bottom centers, matching those and coming across. Flatten that. Oh, I don't think I flattened that well enough because I've already lost it. Okay, and then of course the last edge is matching top and bottom centers and then coming across. Okay, so we are going to match all of these centers together. Now it is easier to sew this together with the zipper open. However, I find for myself, it's easier to try and put it together with the zipper closed. So first of all, I'm matching center to center on the bottom There we go. Then I'm swapping straight across and I'm doing the top, making sure you are putting the right side of the zipper tape to it and the zipper tape isn't in any way tangled up. After I've done that, I come to the side and I mark the center side. And then the center on this side. Okay, now that I've matched those centers, I'm then going to slowly ease the rest in. I'm not someone who uses a lot of clips. If you do like a lot of clips, or if you feel more comfortable using a stapler, you can do that too. I'm going to open this zipper here now. I'm just bringing the zipper down to this corner here on both sides. The reason being is, oh, actually on this side I might open it all the way. But the reason being for this side is I find it easier to get around a little bit more before I bring the zipper down. I find when the zipper's here, the zipper pulls here, it's harder for me to get around that corner. As you can see, I'm not actually even looking at the corners at this point. I'm literally just marking from center out on my straights. And then as I sew those corners, I then go in and match up those corners. Okay. And once you're happy with the clipping, what we're going to do is we're going to head over to the sewing machine and we're going to baste around that whole section with a 1/8 seam allowance. So follow me over. So we're coming over to the sewing machine. I like to start from the base. For these kind of sews, your pokey stick, so your stiletto or a hemostat is your best friend. I haven't quite mastered a hemostat yet, not gonna lie. I still prefer my pokey most of the time, so let's get going. Okay, so we're just basting this on, so it's nothing too stressful. It's just basting stitches, just a practice stitch, really. Now, if you did use staples, just make sure, obviously, you're not sewing over your staples. That is never fun. I'm lifting this up right now because my side gusset just decided to come unstuck. So I'm just sticking that back on so I don't have any issues later on. Like I said, when I come to the corners, I like to kind of do this bit first, at least get around that tiny bit before I open the rest of the zipper, so that I don't have to worry about giving way to a zipper when I'm on a corner. And for me, it's a lot of smoothing. The main thing here that you are doing is smoothing it out. So, oh, here we go. I've not actually opened the zipper tape all the way. So I've obviously opened the zippers, but I forgot to pull the tape away. Okay, so now that's done. And we'll keep going around this corner here. So this is where the pokey stick comes in really helpful, because you can just kind of use it to help you pull, especially around these corners, the zipper tape to where you need it to go. Okay. As we get down to the bottom zipper, the bottom corner, I'm kind of similar in that it depends on when you want to start closing up that zipper, because it's the same situation as it was on that side, right? Like your zipper pull gets in the way. Okay. Okay, so I'm now actually going to get my zipper pull out of the way before I finish on that corner. There we go. And that's all done. Okay, so the next step we're going to do is binding. Like I've said before, I like to bind with fold over elastic. So I'm literally just going to start binding straight away from here. I'm going to go quickly make myself a cup of tea though, and then come back. Okay, so let's get straight into binding. So my biggest tip when it comes to binding is match your thread colors to your binding material, which for me is fold over elastic, and to your fabric colors. So that way, if your stitches miss, you have to go back over, blah, 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 blah. It's not going to be super obvious. I am not going by my own rules. I am using black fold over elastic, and my lining is obviously green, but I am using black thread. Okay, what you may or may not have seen, I don't know if the camera got it, is that I have just singed the edge of my fold over elastic. I don't organize my I don't clip my fold over elastic before I start. I just sew as I go. So yeah, let's get doing. I have another video, like I've said before, about fold over elastic and how I use it and all my tips and tricks. So if you would like to see that, please head over there. Otherwise, we're going to bind this now after we've just base stitched it, and we're going to bind it with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I am grabbing a couple of smaller claws out just in case I need it, especially around the corners. Trying to make sure I don't cover you guys from view. So I'm closing that corner up just so I can get a bigger sewing area as I come around this bend here. Okay, now that I've gotten around it, I'm just putting my zipper back. Okay, I'm coming back down to the bottom. So what I'm quickly going to do is, you can already see this didn't catch here. This happens to me a lot on the bottom, so do not feel like, yeah. So I am just cutting off the excess amount because obviously I'm still sewing on the roll, and then singeing the end there. Make sure that zipper pull is not under my stuff. Okie doke. So that's the binding done. So let's flip it over and see how we went. So I know this side was good because obviously I was watching it as I went. But the other side is a mystery. Okay, let's have a look. Oh, that's just excess thread sticking out. Yep, that's all caught. Okay, so I've got a section here that hasn't caught. That's fine. Oh, I've managed to catch that when I went back around. Okay, so the only section that I've not caught is there's a little bit here at the bottom. So I'm going to go on, so I'm going to go down on the other side this time so that I can catch it easier. And I am using my pokey stick to cover up the threads so that it doesn't show. I'll come down a little bit further and come get this bit here too, just to fix it up a little bit, make it a little prettier. Now, I'm going to say this as well, and I'm going to deny saying it if anyone questions me. But one of the things about binding is it's very big for us as sewers to sit there and go like, oh my God, look at how beautiful that binding is. It is. Don't get me wrong. My binding is gorgeous. No, sorry. What I'm trying to say is when the bag is fully made up, you won't see the binding as much as you do right now. So a lot of sewers are scared of binding. Personally, I find binding hides more things than birthing can. So, and when I say hide things, I don't mean like, oh, I'm doing a dodgy job or anything like that. But binding, I think we pay a lot more attention to binding than normal people do because obviously we're sewers, we care about what we do. But it's actually quite, once the bag is together, you won't notice these bits that I've had to go back over. So don't worry about it and just sew over it again. See, so that's the bit that I've just corrected just there. So by using the same color thread, you can barely see it. So that's that bit done. So let's keep moving on. Okay, moving on to the next step. We've just attached the back zipper gusset to the back panel, and we binded it. So we're going to move on to the front zipper gusset, and we're going to attach the front zipper gusset to the back binding. Okay, so not to the back panel, but to the back zipper gusset, sorry, I should say. And so first of all, if you haven't already, mark all your center points on your zipper gusset. Obviously, I've already done it on my back zipper gusset, so now it's on my front. So I've already marked it on these sides. I haven't marked it on the zipper tape side yet. And the way I'm going to do it is with a pen, because obviously, like I've said before, I do not want to cut into my zipper tape and damage the integrity of it at all. And now that we've marked all the centers, we're going to attach the zipper gusset panel, the front zipper gusset panel, to the back zipper gusset panel. And we're going to attach the non-zipper side to the zipper side, okay? So first of all, this also has to be wrong way out. We're going to start like we did on the back panel. We're going to start with the base to the base. Your base should end up being the same measurement there as well, so it should match up perfectly. Okie doke. Okay, now before I clip the rest, with this it really is easier with it open. But I am just going to do the center points first. For me personally, I just find it's always easier when I'm working on the center points when it's still attached to something. For some people, they like it unzipped the whole time. For me, I like to at least do all my center points first before I unzip. So it just holds a little bit more structure, and for me, I find that easier to work with than working with something floppy. Okay, now that I've got all those center points done, I'm just going to open that zipper up. Sorry, the zipper is the back gusset zipper, so the zipper that's already attached to the back panel that I'm opening up, in case you couldn't tell from the video. And then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put this part, the back, in, and then I'm just going to clip the rest of the zipper around. And to be honest, because it's just zipper tape, it actually like smooths in very easily and comfortably to where it's supposed to go, especially if you have marked your center points. There we go. And now that that's all clipped into place, we're going to head over to the sewing machine and we're going to sew it all down together. The way that this sews easiest for me is to bring it in like this. I start from the base, so the trickiest part. I start from the base, and then you just kind of keep looping the bag. Okay, so this is your sewing machine here, starting from the base, and just keep looping. Okay, so follow me over to the sewing machine. Okie doke. So we're back at the sewing machine. So, like I said, we're starting on the base. My back panel is just kind of floppy lying there at the moment. This is just a basting stitch. Okay, so it's just a basting stitch, so just 1/8. I used to be a huge fan of staples. I find when I'm just working with zipper tape like this one, I don't necessarily need staples. You just kind of let everything flow into place. There we go, and we're coming back to the end. Now, I don't know how well you could see it, but my zipper tape at times looked like it was going to be too loose and there was going to be too much, and then at times it looked like it was getting tight. That's because as you go around the curves, the zipper tape kind of moves around. So you need to trust your clippings and your centers that you did when you clipped it, so that you can keep going on with the process. Now, if for whatever reason your zipper tape doesn't fit, I can almost promise it's because your zipper tape was cut the wrong size, whether it was cut too long or too short. I know because that has happened to me. Okay, so let's go back over to the top view and we'll check everything over. So we've just sewn that zipper gusset on, double check that you're happy with it. Now this part for some reason confuses some people, okay? So what I'm gonna do first of all is this is your back gusset. No, sorry, your front gusset, your big gusset piece, right? So it's the one that you've just sewn on, the big thick one. You're going to find your seam. And then from your seam, you're gonna measure down. So your side seam, sorry, you're gonna find your side seam. And from your side seam, you're gonna measure down a certain amount of measurement. It is in the pattern instructions. And you're doing it on both sides. So you're doing it on that side as well as on this side. So I'm gonna quickly do that. Okie doke. So I've just measured it and there's a mark right there. And there is a mark right there. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to undo all this tape now. And I'm going to get the raw edge of this and I'm going to attach it to this right here. Okay, so literally the back panel that's floppy and it's got its side gusset, we're going to attach that to the front gusset, front zipper gusset, right there. So it's the side where the zipper is on, yes? Oh, I just hit my lighting, sorry. So I'm going to clip that in place, put that right there, and same on the other side. So match that marking, that in place. Okay, and now what we're going to do is we're going to baste that on. So let's quickly go and baste that on and then we'll come back over. Okie doke, so I'm just basting those side panels down with the gusset. Now, if you have a pokey stick or hemostat, I like to use it to help me get all my fabric holder in place. The main thing that you're making sure of while you're doing this is that your zipper tape there is still flat. I know mine is because when I clipped it on, I double checked that it was flat, but just double check it's flat and it's not trying to curl under. Then the other side. There we go. So that's basted down too. So let's head back over and we'll keep assembling the bag. Okay, so we've just sewn those side gussets on. This is what our bag looks like at the moment. We are still leaving that back panel unzipped, okay? We're just leaving that unzipped and just flopped in there, okay? The next thing we're gonna do is we are going to grab our center panel. Actually, I might hold this sideways. I don't know. I'm going to grab our center panel. So that's the one that obviously isn't the front panel. And it has the slip pocket and the 3D zipper pocket. So we're going to, if you haven't already, mark all the center points, which I thought I did. Yes, I did. There we go. Mark all the center points on that panel. And the zipper and 3D pocket, that is facing down. Okay, so you're facing the slip pocket up. And it's going to be matching up to the zipper panel that you just aligned and basted the gusset on. So your front zipper panel, okay? So again, like we've done in all the other times, we are doing all the centers first. I like to put my key leash just tucked in the slip pocket there, just to make it easier while I keep working. There we go. And once all the center to centers are marked, like we did on the exterior panel, I'm now just going to slowly extend out along those flat edges. Okay, now there is a couple of ways you can sew this. So the best way to achieve the best rounded result, in all honesty, is to sew it standing up and looping it. So your sewing machine is here and you're slowly looping it. I've said this before in the Pandora Allure tutorial as well. Some people find it hard to do. I have a low shank machine, so a lot's to do with the shank. So high shank machines, this is super easy. This is what they do. Low shank machines, some people find it hard to loop and they try to do the flat and go around the corners. I find that way actually harder, especially to achieve nice, beautiful corners. So I do it with the loop, okay? Now, I will pre-warn you, this is the hardest step of this bag, okay? So once we get through this, it gets easier, okay? So we're gonna go through, we're going to baste this on, and then once we've basted this on and you're happy with it, we're going to bind it, okay? So follow me over to the sewing machine and let's get sewing. Okay, so let's get going. Like I said, I like to do this in a loop. So this is my center panel. I'm coming in on the base. This is just a basting stitch. My other hand, so my left hand, is underneath here. You can't see it at all, but it's underneath the bag, supporting the weight of the bag. Actually, is this giving you guys a good view? Maybe I need to come in more in that angle. Here you go. That might give you guys a better view. Now, another trick as well, if you're too scared to go in on those corners straight up, another thing you could do is do your 4 straights first. So do your base and your 2 sides first, baste those on first, leaving those corners unsewn, and then going in after you've basted the straight edges to go and baste your corner, okay? So that's another option for you. And right now, let me just get more lighting in there. Here we go. See how this is coming undone because this clip has come undone? So all I need to do is clip that back in place. Unlike the bottom, the top is a little bit flimsier because obviously the top, I don't have pockets, so it's not as thick. It is a thinner, not material, but it is like a thinner segment. So the main thing you're making sure is, which is why I'm poking with my pokey stick, is that my zipper is still flat. My left hand is still on the other side, holding and guiding the bag. My key leash is getting tangled up. This is why I like to put my key leash in the slip pocket. It obviously fell out, but there we go, and we're done. Now, before we move on to binding, first let's take a quick breather and celebrate that you've just done the trickiest part of this bag. Yes, this is even trickier than the next part of the binding. Maybe it's because I like binding, we already know that, but it's because, to me, it's because you're attaching something completely loose. There's no, yeah, you're just making it work, okay? So before we move on, we're gonna check our stitches that we're happy with it. Obviously, I have a little bit of a fold over there. So what I'm gonna check now to see if I'm happy with that little fold is how it looks on the other side, okay? So checking all of there. I'm checking the gusset is smooth. Yep. And then I'm just going to open up, flip that bag right side out and check. My corners are beautiful. This is what I mean. You can't really see the bottom, so it doesn't really matter, see? But everything looks perfect. Everything is sewn on. So I am good to keep moving on. And the next we're going to do is the binding. I'm going to go give myself a cup of tea first. So Tea break. I'll see you back in a sec. Okay, we're back. I'm just going to quickly, so now we're binding. I'm just going to quickly singe that edge of my fold over elastic. Like I've said, if you use fold over elastic like I do, make sure you singe those ends. I'm having a bad feeling about my, no, I've got plenty of bobbin. I should. Okay, so I am binding the same way that I sewed this on. So I will be doing it on a loop, just grabbing a couple of clips just to help me get this under the foot. And we're binding like we did the other binding with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, okay? Okie dokie, that's the binding all on. You can probably see this bit on the bottom, the last bit. Oh no, it caught, it just didn't catch very prettily. So I'm going to quickly fix that up. Like I did before, all I'm doing is flopping it to the other side. I'm fixing it on this side. So that would have helped. Okey-doke. Double checking that I'm happy with everything. There we go, and we'll head back over to the overhead view now. Okie dokie, so we've just bounded that, so that's all put together. And now we are up to the final last panel. So that's the last one that we just did. We're literally going to flip the bag upside down. So we've got that external panel facing back up again. And of course your zipper gusset is still inside out. And what we're going to do now is we are going to grab our external front panel. If you haven't already, make sure you go and find your center points. Okay, and we already marked on that zipper tape before we started sewing. So we're going to get this clipped in place. Now, this is easier to sew with the zipper open again, but like I've done before, when I clip it in place, I like to clip at least my centers anyway, with the zipper still done up so that there is shape and I can see what I am working with and what I am doing. And then now that I've got those bits tucked on, I'm going to unzip the zipper. And then I'm going to clip the rest in place. Just like I did before, just clipping the flat ends and leaving the corners for now. There we go. So that's all clipped in place. So now we are going to take it over to the sewing machine. Yep, I'm sewing it this way. So I'm sewing it from here. So I'm going to sew it this way and then I'm going to continue along just like that. Okay, so follow me over to the sewing machine and let's get sewing. Okie dokie, final panel. So like I said, I'm sewing it flat side down. I'm starting from the base. We are just basting this on, so Super easy, just 1/8 seam allowance. So when I say, yeah, it's pretty easy, but the zipper is on the top, I guess. So I can see the zipper that I'm working, the zipper tape that I'm working with as I sew. Make sure, do you see here how my zipper gusset is in the way, the side gusset? Make sure you tuck that out of the way. You don't want to sew your side gusset down. And zipper tape, you want your zipper tape to be nice and flat, okay? So that's all I'm doing there, is just flattening it around that seam. And then once you get past that, you can flip the rest of your bag out of the way. If you don't have filming equipment behind you like I do, I have a billion tripods back there, which is why this is... Oh, let me see if I can move that tripod out a little bit. Stop getting in my way. That would just normally flip straight open, but I have a tripod stopping it from flipping open. There we go. So that's all basted on. Let me just quickly get that cut off. There we go. That's all basted on. You can have a quick look now and double check that you are happy with how the sewing went. I know I am. I was really happy with how that all went on. Okie dokie, let's go straight on to binding. Okay, so this is our final bind for the bag, apart from the strap. Oh no, actually there's still one more thing we have to do, but we're getting so close to finishing this bag. So again, singeing my fold over elastic. Again, I am starting at the base of the bag. And again, we are binding with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So before I come over to this corner here, I just like to zip this up a little bit just to get me around that bend. It could just be a me thing, but I find that works nicer for me around those corners. Try to make sure both of my gussets are completely out of my way. Okay, I'm just far enough now that I can get the rest of the zipper out of my way. So I'm opening that zipper up. Can't quite flip my bag back yet, but we're getting there. There we go, and get rid of the rest of the bag again. Like I said, my tripod keeps pushing it back. The biggest thing I'm worrying about at these corners is this zipper tape. So you'll see me constantly using this hand to push the zipper tape back to make sure that I'm getting it sewn down as flat as I can. And I'm coming to that corner, so I'm just trying to judge where I want to sew to before I move my zipper, because like on the other side, I don't like having to sew around a zipper. With my sewing foot size, I don't get enough of a seam allowance if I do, so I need to close this up. Here we go. So again, pull it out, double check that we are happy with our binding. It felt like a good bind. It was a good bind apart from one little section here. There we go. All done. So that's all binded. So I'll meet you guys back at the overhead view. Okie dokie. So that's all of this bit all done. So now what we're going to do is we are going to turn the bag right side out. Oh, sorry, I just saw thread. Need to trim it while I see it. Okay, so we're turning the bag right side out. Now, we now just have this last bit to do. So, the two gussets. We're now going to match them together, just like that. And then we are going to sew them together with a 1/8 seam allowance. And once we've done that, that is your Charisma done. You just need to finish off your strap. So let's get this clipped up. Let's go get this done. So follow me over to the sewing machine. Okie dokie, last step. So we are just sewing this with a 1/8 seam allowance. With sewing this bit together, the biggest tip I can give you is use a hemostat or a pokey stick to make sure everything is held in place and that you're happy with the placement. So all I'm doing is making sure that these are all still aligned. Making sure you don't get your zipper or anything caught. It shouldn't. It should be well and truly out of the way of even your sewing foot. But it's just something that's nice to be wary of. There we go. And the other side. There we go. And we're all done. I'll just clean up these clean up these thread ends, and I'll meet you over at the top view. There we go, and it is all done. One of the biggest tips that I can give people with bounded bags is after you finish making it, take time to actually get the fabric to where it's going to be, because like obviously, like you can see this, it's nice, there's nothing wrong with it, but my corners aren't poking out nicely, they're not super smooth. So you want to use your hands, guide that out. You want to use towels to help settle it, or clothes or something. You want something to help get the bag to settle into the shape that you want it to sit at. Now that is particularly important when we are talking about these corners here. So some people have problem opening and closing these corners. As you can see, I have absolutely no problem. It's opening and closing, super easy for me. You guys have seen how many times I've opened and closed it while making the bag. Not much, okay? Some bags need more teaching, okay? So some bags you need to do that 10 times. For some of my tighter bags, I will open and close the zipper 10 times around the tight spots. Then I will stuff my bag overnight. So I'll grab some clothes, I'll grab whatever it is to stuff it full so that the corners know how to sit and the binding knows how to sit. Okay, but let's stop talking about that and let's talk about our gorgeous Pandora Charisma that we've just finished. Yay! Ta-da! And that's it. That's our Pandora Charisma all done. Thank you so much for sewing along with me. I've had such a ball. If you are new to my channel and you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe to my channel. It will mean the world. If I've mentioned any products or patterns or anything, they will probably be links in the description below. Some of them I am an affiliate for, so I may receive small payouts. So if you do purchase anything from them, thank you so much from me and the other small businesses as well. But that's it. Thank you so much for joining me. Any comments, questions, please feel free to leave them down below. I will try to get back to every single person. Again, it's Sam from Made by Erin. Thank you so much for sewing with me today, and I'll see you guys next time.